What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 346. I am one of your Limited Resources. My name is Marshall, and joining me on the line all the way from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, it's Owen Turtenwald. Owen, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How's your day? How are things?
It's going pretty well so far. I'm excited to jump into this episode.
You excited to dive into the rares? This is where things get complicated. This is where we need your professional brain to help us decipher all of these crazy rares that we end up getting in these sets these days.
The thing is, I'm so lucky. I feel like I'm going to open a lot of these rares a lot. So
a lot of the good ones?
Yeah, I'm going to have the good ones really often, so I need to figure out now what they do.
All right. Well, we're going to help you do that, and you're going to help us as well. Before we get into the Rare and Mythic Rare set review for Eldritch Moon, I want to remind you that Limited Resources is brought to you every week by ChannelFireball.com. Please do check them out. If you're into Magic, if you need to find singles, if you need to find sealed product or supplies, you're going to find all of that stuff at competitive prices with great customer service at Channel Fireball. You can also sell your cards back to them. They'll even give you a 30% bonus if you're trading them in for store credit. And you can even get Limited Resources sleeves, deck boxes, and t-shirts there. They were part of what made that possible. So thanks to Channel Fireball for that. And of course, free content. I mean, you can go there and you can find videos, podcasts, articles from some of the best players in the world, including Owen, helping to improve your game at Magic. That's what this show's all about. That's what CFB is all about. That's part of the reason why I love our partnership. And we do encourage you to check out their site, channelfireball.com. Of course, the show's also brought to you by you, the patrons from Patreon. That's right. If you want to support the show directly, you can do so. It's real easy. You just go to patreon.com/limitedresources. All the information is there. It lays out exactly how it works. It's really easy. You set how much you want to give per episode. Whenever an episode goes up, it charges you that much, and you can put a cap on your monthly limit so that you can stay within your budget. It's that easy. You can even sign up for as little, for whatever you want. It can be $1 a show. It doesn't matter. Have we helped you maybe, make a booster pack over the course of a month? That ends up being $1 per show. So that's it. It's real easy. And please do check out the Patreon. You can get some cool bonuses for signing up as well. Okay. So this week we've got the Rare and Mythic Rare set review show for Eldritch Moon. And that means that we're going to go over the grading scale for people that haven't heard before. Just as a quick refresher, we like to put a grade at the end of each of our card evaluations. This is a punctuation mark we like to put on the card so that you have an idea of where it stands and you don't get lost in the fray of the details. The important part to note here, though, is that the grade isn't the end-all be-all. It is just a way for us to kind of encapsulate where we stand on the card, but the details are what's really important about how we evaluate it, when it's good, when it's not, when to bring it in. So, I know a lot of people look at the grades, and they only look at the grades, and I think that they're missing out a lot. The people that make sure to really listen to what we say about each card are going to be the ones that benefit the most. So, with that said, here's the grading scale overview. A are for bombs, game winners, good in many situations, especially when you're behind. They're the best cards in the set, and sometimes they're even removal spells, of the hyper-efficient variety. We're going to be seeing some A's here. On the Rare and Mythic Rare show, we tend to see things get polarized a bit. We have a lot of C's and B's and D's in the Commons and Uncommon show, but here on the Rares and Mythics, things tend to be more towards the A's and F's range of the scale. Cards like Archangel Avacyn, Fiery Temper probably makes the A range. Tireless Tracker, these are the cards from Shadows that you might want to consider when you're thinking about what an A is. A B are cards that really pull you towards their colors. They're often headliners for the set. They're the go-to cards and the reasons to be and a color, or a pair of colors or whatever. A lot of solid removal will fall into this camp. Cards like Nearheath Chaplain, Airdwall Illuminator, Deadweight, Era Falcon Wrath, Pack Guardian. Just these powerhouse, often uncommons. Sometimes in this case, Rare and Mythic Rares are going to be Bs. Cs are your playables. They're the pawns of limited. They're the cards that kind of fill out your deck. They're pretty interchangeable, but you do need some amount of these to make your deck. Cards like Throttle, Hinterland Logger, Quilled Wolf usually fall into the C camp. Ds are sometimes playable, but you'd prefer not to run them. Sometimes they they end up making it into your 23, but you're like, I guess I got to play this card. That kind of thing. Usually bad removal goes here as well. Cards like Insolent Neonate, Cathar's Companion, Catalog, Seagraph, Scob. Just these cards that are fringe playable. You could do worse, but you could do a lot better as well. Fs are your unplayable in virtually all scenarios. They're incredibly narrow cards that can fit here too, where there's such a 1 in 1,000 drafts that you actually play. It will often fit in the F camp, or sometimes cards with just insane mana costs that you just realistically could never get to. Cards like Chaplain's Blessing, Creeping Dread, Vessel of Volatility, these are your Fs. There are two other grades or grade groups that we'll give. There's Sideboard and Build Around. Sideboards are cards that, self-explanatory, are going to be starting out in your sideboard, but could come in out of the sideboard and be really powerful, so they're worth noting for that. They're just hard to put a grade on because they're like A's when you bring them in, or B's, but when they're not, they're F's, so they're usually just started in the board. And then your build-around cards. These are cards that reward you for building around them, but they're usually not good enough on their own. They usually don't have text on them that just says, okay, I affect the board or I help win the game. It needs help, and we're going to be keeping an eye on those. Autumnal Gloom, Howlpack Resurgence, from the past set. Oh, and for the sideboard, I had a couple of examples: Biting Rain, Root Out, these type of cards. Okay, so that's it for the grading review. Let's get right into the cards here. We're going to start things off with blue. Again, we like to rotate the colors just in the interest of fairness to those colors, make sure we're talking about everything the same amount. And that leads us to our first rare, Owen. It is Coax from the Blind Eternities. It's kind of weird. It's 2 and a blue for a sorcery. It's rare. It says, you may choose an Eldrazi card you own from outside the game or in exile. Reveal that card and put it into your hand.
Wow.
What does that even mean? Does that just mean I can go into my sideboard in Limited?
Yeah, that's what it means, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too.
So the first time I looked at this card, I actually just thought it said, search your library for an Eldrazi and put it in your hand. Mm-hmm. And I was about ready to give it a D- at that point. But now I'm just at a full F. The thing is, to overcome the fact that you have a card that doesn't affect the board, it's slow, it's kind of weird, you have to win the game a huge percentage of the time that you're with the card that you're tutoring for. At that point, you would just put that card in your deck.
Exactly.
So for Limited, you just put the card in your deck.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had so many, like your Eldrazi card has to be so good that you win, like let's say a Decimator of Provinces or an Emrakul, and you'd rather just put that in your deck. And the reason you would want to play this instead is because you don't want to have too many bad cards in your deck in the early game. Maybe if you got like 5 Decimator of the Provinces, I could see it. Play 2 in the main, 3 in the board, and then 1 of these.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the problem, of course, is that this card is also bad in the early game, right? Like you can't, I mean, at least you're using your mana, but like that's not exactly a glowing review of a Magic card. Well, at least I used some mana, right? It's pretty bad.
This card is really, 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 really bad.
Yeah. I like your Dream Pool, though. I'd like to see a picture of that one on Twitter.
It's 5
like mythics
that's
or whatever.
The only possible scenario. I would have to have like, maybe if I had like 3 Emrakuls and 3 Decimator, and having this card means I can choose between the two when I play it, but it's just, just way too bad.
Right, so F for Coax from the Blind Eternities, not going to be seen play there. The next one is called Docent of Perfection. I think it's called Docent. Is it Docent or Docent? I'll have to look that one up. I'm going to say Docent of Perfection for now, though. It's 3 blue for a Insect Horror. It is rare, and it's a 5/4 with flying for 5 mana. Now, I can tell you that there's more to this card, but it's all upside. So we're talking about, vanilla test-wise, we've got a 5/4 flying for 5. So I'm already way in on that. I'm a big fan of a 5/4 flyer for 5 mana. So if there's anything even remotely good about the rules text, then this card is going to be hard to give anything other than the A range in my mind. And it says, so here's the rules text. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, transform Docent of Perfection. Now, I want to note that Docent is an insect horror. It doesn't count itself on the wizard scale. When it transforms, it becomes Final Iteration, which is a 6/5 flying Eldrazi insect that gives all wizards you control +2/+1 and flying, and it still has that ability that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get a 1/1 human.
Yeah, this card is just totally busted.
Wow, what a great card.
It's incredible. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
The only thing that you could even possibly criticize about this card is that it does have 4 toughness for 5 mana, and that you don't get anything when it comes into play, and you don't get anything when it dies. So you could reasonably play this card for 5 mana, and then your opponent could throttle it, and then the game continues as normal. It's not like the end-all, be-all, instantly win the game when you play it, but it's as close to that as you're going to get. I feel pretty comfortable giving this just a clean A.
I give it an A as well. Yeah, Docent of Perfection just meets the floor so well, and I totally agree with your extra point, though, and that is worth noting, because to get into that A+ Super Bomb territory range, you need things to happen now. You need a card like this that also affects the board. You know, thinking back to like the Titans, right? To cards you know, these cards that affect the battlefield when you play them, even if they die.
Or like a Wormcoil Engine.
Wormcoil Engine's a great one.
No matter how far behind you are, you're going to win when you get it, and it's resilient to removal.
Exactly. Yes. But Docent isn't, but still, it's an A. What a great card. I cannot wait to open and play that one. I mean, god dang, that's insane. It turns all your little creatures into little mini, what's
Snapping
it called?
Drakes, Cloud Mantis.
Insectal aberrations, I think, is the idea.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, little flying bugs. All right, next is called Identity Thief. It's 2 blue for a 0/3 shapeshifter at rare. So we're not blown away by the stats, but it says, not yet. Whenever it attacks, you may exile another target non-token creature. If you do, Identity Thief becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. Return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Wow. This is why we have the Rares and Mythic Rare show, because these type of cards are very strange, right? So we're talking about an 0/3 for 4 that wants to attack, okay, which automatically sounds weird. But you're going to exile another creature. Now, this is really important because it's a non-token creature, so it doesn't get to just mow down tokens. They did make sure of that. But it gets the creature out of the way. So whatever that creature was is exiled and is no longer going to be able to block Identity Thief. And Identity Thief is going to become a copy of it. So presumably bigger or better than an 0/3, at least when it comes to attacking. They are going to get their creature back at the beginning of the next end step. So they will be able to attack you back with it. And if it hasn't entered the battlefield trigger, it will trigger again as well. But then your Identity Thief just looks like it just stays a copy of it. No, just until end of turn. So Identity Thief goes back into 0/3 at the end of the turn as well. Weird card, man. The first thing that I think is to zoom out a little bit from the details and just note here that this only works if you're able to attack with it.
Yes. I'm going to go a little bit controversial with this one, and I'm going to give it a B-.
Okay.
For me, this looks like it's a good card, and here's why. For 4 mana on the 5th turn, if you attack, you can exile a blocker and make it into a somewhat reasonable attacker. Yeah. So in those instances, let's say you just exile a Hill Giant, you're making it so your opponent can't block, and you're attacking for 3. That's sort of like a Goblin Heel Cutter. Not as powerful because you don't have the dash, and this is conditional on a few other things. But given that a lot of the time it's going to be a halfway decent attacker, as good as your opponent's best creature, and it's going to deprive your opponent of a blocker, that's a pretty powerful effect. And on the upside, you can exile your own creatures, which means if you have your own creatures that have entered the battlefield abilities, you can just be repeating those as long as you can get this creature through. So obviously, if it's a stalled board, it's just going to be a 4 mana 0/3. It's a pretty weak defensive card. But I think that there's enough cool upside that you can maybe stitch that together and you can get it work, that it's a pretty powerful, unique card.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it a reprehensibly bad defensive card, right? A 4 mana
it's really
0/3.
Bad. It's really bad.
Now here's the question. How much higher are you valuing this in a deck that's looking to be a little more assertive, right? Now, you talked last week about how the vast majority of the decks that you draft, and I think it's also a good general statement, that are drafted are mid-range decks of some variety. But we have definitely seen slower and faster or better curve versus, less better curve or more card advantage based builds of these mid-range decks. And, I'm wondering, where does Identity Thief best fit? Is it in an aggressive deck? And conversely, is it pretty bad in a more controlling deck, or do you still run it?
If I was a dedicated control deck, I would avoid this card, but there's some chance you play it. God,
I can just see some situations where you can go off with this, right?
Yeah, just a cursory glance of the Shadows over Innistrad. It looks like it's doing something cool with Drownu Corpse Trawler.
Yes, for sure.
I guess it would be a 1/1 when it attacks. That's pretty rough. But mainly I was looking at Stitched Mangler.
Mangler, yeah. I like that.
I don't recall any nice cards from this set that were working well with enter the battlefield ability, so maybe I'm overstating that aspect of it. Maybe it's definitely not an unplayable card. Maybe it's going to be a C or a C minus, but I can see moments where it shines, and it's not embarrassing. So definitely not a premium rare, and definitely not unplayable, somewhere in between.
Yeah, I agree. I think the upside on this card is very, very high, and I think the downside is quite low, to be honest. Like, if you're behind, Identity Thief is pretty terrible, and I could see... I bet you anything we'll get tweets from people going, oh my God, I did this with Identity Thief. And, the other thing to keep in mind is that, if your opponent does want to play their bomb and you have an Identity Thief, it gets a little awkward for them. You get to hit them first. You get to get it out of the way. Yeah, I'm gonna go right in the middle and give Identity Thief a C or a C plus. I'll give it a C plus. I think that just to make sure that when you draft it, or put it in your sealed pool, that you're considering the fact that you do need to be able to turn it sideways and attack in order to make the card good. And I think if you can, then I think it's really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Imprisoned in the Moon is next. It's 2 and a blue for an enchantment aura at rare. It enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker, and the enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap, add colorless mana to your mana pool, and loses all other card types and abilities. Weird.
Yeah, this is... effectively an Oblivion Ring with downside.
Okay.
Because you're going to totally neutralize one of your opponent's cards, effectively removing it from the board, and they're going to get a wastes. So
how big of a downside is that?
It's real. It's not negligible, and it's not such a huge downside that I wouldn't play this card. My initial impression is I want to give this card a B or a B minus.
Yeah, I was going to give it a B.
It's unconditional removal. It's just going to kill a creature, no questions asked, and in blue, which almost never gets that kind of ability. So, like, if you're a blue-white Flyers deck, like, this is much better than it would be in any other kind of deck. Like, if you're, like, blue-red and you have a lot of burn, it's a little bit worse, but it's nice because it's going to kill creatures that your burn spells aren't going to be able to kill.
Yeah.
Right. The downside of this card is just that you don't want to play it on turn 3 because you could be ramping your opponent. Usually in limited, by the time you get to turn 5, 6, and 7, giving your opponent a mana is not that big of a downside. I'm going to go ahead and say that I would never cut this from a blue draft deck, and I would pick it high and always play it. So
yeah, other things to keep in mind, it can hit lands.
Yeah, you turn a forest into a waste.
You could. I mean, the situation where that pops up would almost require me to have deck lists or a ton of information about my opponent's list, but it is possible.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it either, but, it's a niche scenario. Also, just remember that it hits planeswalkers. You don't face them in limited often, but when you do, if you look down at your Imprisoned in the Moon, if you've played it a couple of times, you're going to get used to just killing creatures with it. But remember, it can hit planeswalkers. And then the other corner case scenario is that you can cast it on your own creature to make a land if it's just desperation time, or if next turn you just have to cast your 8-drop or whatever. So, these are all corner cases. The vast majority of the time, Imprisoned in the Moon is just going to take out an opponent's creature, and that's really good. So I agree with your original assessment. I gave it a B.
Yep.
Solid card. Mausoleum Wanderer is next. It's blue for a 1/1 flying spirit. Whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Now, of note, that's not a counter. It just gets it temporarily. And then it has the activated ability. You can sacrifice it to counter an instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays X, where X is its power. There's a lot going on here. Eric really liked this card for Constructed, but I've actually already seen it in Play Unlimited, and I wasn't super impressed. It was kind of bad.
Yeah, this is pretty clearly just a card printed for the purposes of Constructed.
Yeah.
And I've got it at about a D+. I mean, it's a playable card, but it's poor. It's low power. It's inefficient. And there's a lot of words on there, but I mean, if my deck had 10 spirits in it, I'd be happy to play this card, and it would be pretty strong. Just because a sometimes 2/2 flyer for 1, that's a pretty good card. The countering an instant sorcery is it's so negligible that I would almost ignore it completely because it's unlikely to come up, and if it comes up in a game, unlikely to matter. So
yeah, I like D+ for Mausoleum Wanderer just because of the spirit upside. Like you said, if you had a spirit, a white blue spirits deck, then this card would be fine in it. Otherwise, I'm looking to keep it in the board.
Yeah, I would hope to not play it.
Mind's Dilation is next. and it's a it's for dreamers. It's a 5 blue enchantment at Mythic Rare. It says, all right, so here's what it does. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost.
Yeah, this card is just bad.
Stone unplayable, right?
It's really, really, really bad. I could see maybe putting it in my deck, but the problem is it costs 7, which is already extremely expensive. And by the time you cast it, your opponent has to not be in an advantageous position because it's so easy for them to just stop playing cards and beat you with what they've got in play. And the ability is conditional. When you mill them, you have to not hit a land.
Yes.
I saw somebody trigger this at the pre-release, and when they milled their opponent, they got a green vessel, and they were just playing a blue-white deck and just couldn't even use it. I mean, like, obviously...
That is so embarrassing.
It's really small, but obviously that comes up. If you get a card you can't even use, or you don't want to use at that time, it's like makes it even worse. It's just there's such a small percentage of your opponent's deck that you want to hit that can change the game. Yeah, this card is just really, really, really bad. Yeah,
Mind's Dilation, in my mind, is a stone F. The crux of it is that if we're going to play a 7-mana spell unlimited, you can do it. There's some formats where it's pretty discouraged, but generally speaking, you can get away with it if you make sure that your deck is built to support it, and if it wins you the game when you play it, 80% plus of the time or whatever. Mind's Dilation is nowhere near any of that. There's a very realistic scenario where you tap out for Mind's Dilation, say go, and it does nothing for the rest of the game.
Yeah, literally no impact, as if it had no words on it at all.
Yes, except for it costs you 7 mana and a card. So, yeah, I'm on F for Mind's Dilation, though I do salute your optimism if you put that card in your deck. Next is Niblis of Frost. This is a nice one. It's 2 blue for a 3/3 flying spirit at rare. It's also got prowess. So already a really nice package here. A 3/3 flyer for 4 mana is something I'm deeply interested in limited. And if you tack on prowess onto that, I'm in. I already am a big fan of Niblis of Frost, and it's even got a very relevant extra ability. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Wow.
Yeah, this card is extremely powerful. I have it at an A, and for all of the same reasons that we did not give the Docent of Perfection an A+, because you could just cast it and they could kill it.
Yes.
But this is better than the Docent of Perfection because it's cheaper.
It's 4 mana.
And the ability is a little bit better. I mean, when you have this card, you can get in race-type scenarios that there may well be no other card that would allow you to win it.
Yes. And you play the instant or sorcery. Now you have a 4/4 flyer that just tapped down their best blocker or attacker.
Yep. It reminds me of Guardian of Tazim, and that card was just totally busted as well.
Totally. Yeah. I'm also giving Niblis of Frost an A, by the way. And the real kicker on this thing is that it's 4 mana. Like, you normally don't get cards this powerful for 4 mana. Even 5 mana, I'm like, wow, it's only 5 mana. I would expect 6 or 7 to get, to the level of potency that this card has. Now, this card wouldn't do well at 6 mana, I don't think. But Niblis of Frost, if this was 5 mana, I wouldn't flinch at all. Like, if
still
you just
play it, it's almost still an A.
It's almost still an A. Like, and it's 4 mana, which is infinitely better in the sense that, like, it just means that on a greater percentage of games, you're actually going to get to have it hit the battlefield and matter. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Niblis of Frost. We both gave it an A.
Yeah, and honestly, if you just valued this at an A+, it would be almost no difference.
Yeah,
in how your drafts go.
Sure.
It's like it's as close to it that it might as well just be it.
Yeah. Yeah, card's amazing. My God. Summary Dismissal is next. It's 2 blue for an instant at rare. It says, exile all other spells and counter all abilities. Kind of weird, right? So exiling a spell means that there's a spell on the stack, and instead of getting countered, it's going to get exiled. It just goes away. It's no longer on the stack. And of course, since it's exiled, it can't resolve anymore. So it effectively counters the spell for all intents and purposes, but the card's also exiled, and it can air quotes, counter cards that can't be countered because it's not technically countering them. And then it actually counters all abilities.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, I've got this card at a D because at the end of the day, it is still 4 mana for a counterspell, which is an inefficient rate, and you get punished a bit more when you don't get to use it profitably. But it has the upside of being like a totally reasonable to maybe even actively good sideboard card against the emerge creatures. All the emerge creatures, you're going to kill the creature that they use to sacrifice to emerge. You're going to counter the card that they cast, and you're going to exile the ability that they get from the emerge card that they've invested so much in. Like,
oh, wow.
It of the Horrid Swarm, they're going to put get 2/1/1s on the stack. You play this, you counter both their cards. It's a total blowout.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I do think that there's enough decks you're going to play against in Limited that either don't have emerge or are going to have a low curve where a 4-mana counterspell is going to be too conditional. That I would tend towards not main decking it and sideboarding it in really often.
You know, it is interesting to note here, Owen, as well, that Summary Dismissal on the draw still doesn't interact well with most of the emerge cards that you're going to be seeing.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah, they play a 3-drop and then they play their 4th land and then they can emerge right now, and you're staring at your Summary Dismissal with 2 islands and a swamp on the battlefield and another swamp in your hand, and you're like, well, why did I bring this in?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Something to consider as well. Maybe skewing it towards when you're on the play. Narrow, but powerful. I'm not a big fan of it either. I give Summary Dismissal a D. You are dismissed. Our last blue card is called Wharf Infiltrator. This is an interesting one as well. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/1 with Skulk. I know you're in on that.
I am in on it.
Yeah, it does not have lifelink, I hate to tell you, but it is a 1/1 Skulk for 2. So basically your wheelhouse. It's a human horror. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Of course, we call that looting. So Skulk hits you, loot. I like that. And then it says, whenever you discard a creature card, you can pay 2. If you do, you get a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token. Interesting.
Yeah, this card is really powerful.
It seems good to me.
It's really, really good. The thing is, even if it was just 1/1 Skulk for 2, where when you hit them you draw and discard, that would still be really strong. Like Looter Ilkor was remarkably similar to this, and that card was like one of the best commons that there was.
Okay.
Just looters are just so good in Limited.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you remember all that talk on Twitter about looting. People just love looters. They're just good.
Yes. I mean, they don't use them enough.
But now you get the bonus of discard a creature and get a 3/2, which it's going to be hard for the creature that you discard to not be cast for similar stats or be better for more mana. So the ability's not that good, but it's just another option. So I do like this card. I think it's strong.
Do you think that there's a scenario where you attack with your Wharf Infiltrator, hit, discard a creature, pay 2, and then the next turn just do it again, kind of just don't care what you're discarding and just make a bunch of 3/2s in a hurry? Like, is that a strategy that you could see actually happening? Or is it like, look, if you've got a 4-drop, wait a turn, play the 4-drop?
Well, it's context dependent, but the further ahead you get on the board, the more likely you are to discard higher casting cost cards to get 3/2s, because it's so easy to press your advantage with this.
Because you get them now.
Well, you get them immediately, and you're going to be ahead on board, and you have this creature that's dealing 1 damage every turn, so your opponent's life is going to just be going lower and lower, so there's even more incentive to just put more creatures into play. Yeah. So obviously it depends on what you have and whether or not, but if you can't cast a creature and you have already made a creature with this, then you should most of the time just be making another creature.
Okay. I like Wharf Infiltrator a lot.
Yeah.
The interesting scenarios are where it does get blocked, right? Where your opponent just plays like an 0/3 or an 0/4 or whatever.
Yeah, that's annoying, but what can
I mean, I'm not saying it really hurts the card too much. I think you still just play it and get in there.
It kind of does hurt the card, but I would still play it at the same rate. It just makes it a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Because your opponent could just play like a 1/2, and then you can't do anything unless you deal with it.
God, the card is sweet.
Yeah, I've got it at like an A or A-.
Yeah, I don't know where to put it. Dice to literally all removal, but it's only 2 mana, so it's not really the end of the world.
Maybe it's a B+, but it's definitely...
I'm going to go B+.
It's definitely a good card.
It's really good. Yeah, and I mean, looting, right? All right, so that's it for the blue cards. Some powerful stuff in there just to kick things off already. We gave 2 A's at least.
Oh, yeah.
The Docent of Perfection and the Niblis of Frost. Yeah,
those are both great.
Yeah, really good. All right, let's move on to black. Our first black rare is called Collective Brutality. And it is 1 and a black for a sorcery. It's rare. It's got Escalate. And the escalate cost in this case is not mana. It is, in fact, cards from your hand. You may discard a card to add modes. Here's the modes that you can choose from. There's 3 of them. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an instant or sorcery card from it. That player discards that card. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. And target opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. Now, the interesting thing about this is that if you wanted, for 2 mana, you could do all of them. Mm-hmm. Which is pretty powerful. I mean, discarding 2 cards in addition, of course. But, taking away an instant or sorcery from their hand, killing one of their small creatures, and draining them for 2 is certainly, that's a laundry list of stuff. All relatively minor effects that add up to something pretty powerful. The really interesting part about this card, though, of course, is the escalate, is that it's discard a card. It's not extra mana. So you can do this stuff pretty early in the game.
Yep. I got this card at about a C+, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. The majority of the time when you cast this card, it's going to be 2 mana, target creature gets -2/-2. That's it. Yep. Because a lot of the power in 2 mana to give a creature -2/-2 is killing a creature early on in the game. Mm-hmm. And early on in the game is where you're paying the highest cost for discarding cards from your hand. Because as the game goes on, it's easier to determine which of your cards have diminishing returns, like lands.
Totally.
That's when you want to be escalating, is when you're discarding lands. And you don't want to discard a land to drain your opponent for 2, because many games of Limited are not decided by what each player's life total is, but instead what cards get played in the order in which they get played. Like if I just play a bunch of if I play 5 spells and you haven't played any spells, it almost doesn't even matter what life total you're at. You're going to die eventually. So draining for 2 is at its weakest at the beginning of the game, paired with both the abilities, in fact, that are good at the beginning of the game. I mean, if you can kill a creature and then use the duress mode of this, it can be pretty good. But in general, it's hard to want to discard a land for an ability that can just miss.
Yeah, and the last ability, the loses 2 life and gain 2 life, is a very minor effect in most scenarios.
It's not worth a card when you only have access to 6 cards in the beginning of the game, 7 cards.
So, all right, so how about what grade would you give 1 and a black sorcery target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn?
A C.
Maybe a C.
Maybe a C+.
Yeah, B-, C+.
Is good.
Yeah, it's, it's somewhat comparable to Deadweight, right? It costs an extra mana, but it'll often get the same job done in that it'll kill something small to medium. Yeah, I don't know. And then this one, of course, if you do manage to get a card out of it, you can trade a useless card for an instant or sorcery, which there's a decent amount of. I have to note that if you look at the cards in modern Limited sets like this one, a lot of the removal are like auras, enchantments, that kind of thing. They're not all instants and sorcery, so it's not like you just are necessarily going to get something, and if you do get something, it might not be what you really want, a good removal spell or an escalate card or something. Yeah, collective brutality is a tough one to grade.
That's a really important point you just made about the fact that you can go like, oh, I saw 10 spells, but if 3 of them are enchantments, it's like your card just got a lot worse.
Exactly, and that happens a lot. If you break down your Limited decks, you'll find that you don't play as many instants and sorceries as many people think. Out of the 6 to 9 or whatever slots that are non-creatures, a lot of times it's only 3 or 4 that are actually sorceries, because you're running your auras and stuff like that. So, All right. So what do we want to give collective brutality?
I said C+, could easily be B-.
I'll go B-. I mean, it's reasonable removal that has some upside in some way, and I can appreciate that.
I guess discarding can fuel delirium. You might just want to throw something in the grave to drain for 2 and just go like, I'll just take my chances.
It's a madness enabler. Yeah, whatever. This next one, Owen.
It's very good.
It's Pack Rat. It's back. Okay,
it's very, very good.
It's not quite Pack Rat, but it's amazing. It's Crypt Breaker. It's black mana for a 1/1. So 1 black for a 1/1 zombie, and that's going to be important in a minute here. You can pay 1 and a black, tap it, and discard a card to put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Now, right off the bat, I want to just lay this scenario where you go turn 1 Crypt Breaker, land, and now you're active. Like that is just a beautiful, clean progression that immediately on turn 2, you can start discarding cards and making 2/2s. Now, this is the real kicker here. You can tap 3 untapped zombies you control to draw a card and lose a life. Wow.
Yeah, this card is super strong.
It's so good, man.
I might make myself look like a fool, but I'm pretty happy to give this just a clean A+. I think it's baby. I think it's so good because part of the, like, some very real percentage of the games when you play this card on turn 1, you're going to beat your opponent before he even gets the chance to play a lot of the cards in his hand.
Absolutely.
It's going to be as if your opponent got mana screwed. You're just going to kill them so quickly. And it's not even like a card that's bad to draw in the late game, because so many of your other creatures could just be zombies anyway, so that the turn you cast it, you could just draw a card.
Yep. Totally. And remember, the tap 3 untapped zombies you control, you can tap summoning 6 zombies.
Oh, yeah. Like himself.
Like himself, too. Cryptbreaker can absolutely be tapped for it. The one interesting note here, of course, is that Cryptbreaker's activated ability does include tapping Cryptbreaker. So if you make the 3rd zombie that you have, you won't be able to activate to draw a card that turn. Because Cryptbreaker as the 3rd zombie will be tapped, but whatever. It's a minor note that I got a chance to play this card in the pre-release and I noticed that. But this card is absolutely absurd. I played it in the early part of the game, and I started making zombies, and my opponent just looked at it like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this thing. Like, I just don't happen to have a removal spell in my hand, and now you're just going to go off. And I'm just like, I am. And I did, and I won. And then later in a different game, I played it much more in the mid to late part of the game, and it was close. The board state was close-ish, right? And I started making zombies. And that halted my opponent's attack because they didn't want to start trading off ground creatures for my zombies.
For your lands that you discarded.
My lands, yeah, my nonsense that I couldn't cast or it wasn't very good. And then they thought, okay, well, he's probably going to start attacking me and I'm going to be able to like manage the zombie situation. I looked at my life totals and I was ahead on life, but I was at like 18, facing no pressure. And I'm just like, go. Make a zombie, draw a card, and they're like, crap. So they had to play a sweeper out of their hand because they knew that I was just going to sit there and just start drawing a ton of cards and just going off with this card. This is on a 1-mana creature.
Yeah.
This creature cost me 1 mana to cast.
And like, in the situation that you just detailed, when your opponent's not lucky enough to have a sweeper, they have to just start attacking with every creature that they have every turn to hope to end the game in their favor. Because they know that the game's going to end not in their favor if they don't do anything. Right. So...
Yeah, I love Cryptbreaker. I give it an A. The card takes over. It's not Pack Rat. It doesn't clean the game up quite as quickly, but it felt Pack Rat like. It felt here's the thing. When you played Pack Rat in Limited, you didn't and sometimes it constructed if you're Owen. The thing that occurred to you as you started activating the Pack Rat was that you didn't have to do anything else. Like, you could have been drawing the Ace of Spades and Jokers off the top of your deck because it didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was activating Pack Rat every turn, and your opponent just, once the window was closed, just didn't have any ways to deal with that. And Cryptbreaker feels similar. It's like, well, I could no, I'll just make a zombie, right? Because once I get my 3rd zombie, I'm going to start drawing cards, and then the game's just done. Like, they just cannot keep up with that. The big difference is that all the zombies are 2/2s from Cryptbreaker, where Pack Rat got, bigger, and then eventually just killed your opponent. And this is not going to have that same swing where there's like the critical turn when you make your 4th zombie and now you can attack for 20. That doesn't happen this way, but it rewards you with this grindy aspect of tapping the zombie. So I love me a Cryptbreaker.
Yeah, it's really strong.
It's amazing. Dark Salvation is next. It's XX black for a sorcery at rare. Target player puts X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. It's not that great, but there's more. Then up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each zombie that player controls. So, I think a pretty typical scenario here would be that you've got 5 mana and you're going to make X equal to 2. So 2 + 2 + 1 = 5. You're going to get 2 2/2s and you're going to give a creature, well, at least -2/-2 until end of turn. Though it is worth noting here that it's each zombie zombie that player controls as well.
Yeah, this card is really, really good. Yeah. I like it at a B+ and could easily be an A. The thing is, assume that you haven't drawn enough lands. At 3 mana, it's comparable to Tooth Collector.
Yeah, good point.
Remarkably comparable.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have the upside of the Delirium, but that doesn't decide all that many games anyways. You have to get it, and it has to be relevant. So 3 mana for a 2/2 that gives a creature -1/-1, that's a good rate. And that's the downside of this card. And the upside is you play it for 5, you get 4 power and 4 toughness, and you get to kill a 2/2. Now we're talking about like almost Shriek Maw level.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
And it scales up at 7, at 9, which like I don't want to plan to put 7 and 9 mana cards in my deck, but because this is X and you can play it whenever you draw it, it has none of the downside of those. So this card is really good.
Yeah. And again, it does count all your zombies, not just the ones that you got from Dark Salvation. So if you happen to have a Crypt Breaker laying around or, you know, a Gavany Unhallowed or whatever, it's going to count.
That's hugely relevant.
Well. Yeah, it's very relevant.
When you play it for 5, it's like killing a 3/3 or a 4/4 when you're getting 2/2s instead of a 2/2. It totally changes the impact of the card. Absolutely. At 5 mana, if you're killing a 4/4, that's a throttle. That's already a card people are picking high and putting in their deck. And then now you're getting 2 2/2s. You're just getting a Geese's Bidding with your throttle.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, when you put it like that, that's absurd.
Yeah, this is a great card.
Yeah, I'm going to go A- on Dark Salvation. I was actually in the B to B plus range, but you've talked me up, Owen. I think Dark Salvation's that good.
Could easily be there.
Yeah. Liliana, The Last Hope is next. This is 1 black for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker, of course, Mythic Rare. And she's got the +1 activated ability. Up to 1 target creature gets -2/-1 until your next turn. And just for clarification's sake, that means that, yes, it's going to keep that -2/-1 on it, even on your opponent's turn for when they're looking to attack you or Liliana.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, come on. -2, so that leaves Liliana at 1 loyalty. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Well, that's a thing, right? I mean, we do tend to play a little less than half of our decks end up being creatures often, or, at least a third of the deck.
Mm-hmm. And creatures can just get there through combat normally.
Yeah, they can already just be there, right? It's any creature card from your graveyard, not just the ones that got milled.
It's not just a random ability.
Yeah. Still not great. I think you're going to be plussing Liliana a lot more often. And now if you do the hard work of going from 3 loyalty up to 7, one at a time, and then minusing for the ultimate, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. So
weird ability.
It's a really weird ability, but it basically just says that you're getting, like, even if your board's completely clear, you're going to get 2 zombies, 2/2 zombies on your end step, and then the next turn you're going to get X
+2.
2 plus 2, so 4, and then anyway, so
6,
you're just going to make a huge army of zombies, which honestly I don't really see how. I think that Ultimating Liliana is going to be really difficult in limited, just because it's so far up to go. It's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just going to take forever. But
it's rare. It takes forever, and the efficacy of the ability is also going to take kind of forever.
Mm-hmm, for sure. But all of that being said, I'm a big fan of the card. I still think it's great. Planeswalkers tend to play really well in limited, almost no matter what they do, almost. And Liliana does stuff. -2/-1 to a creature can kill a creature for starters. There's plenty of 1 toughness. You and I talked about that last week on the Commons and Uncommons review about how many creatures actually with 1 toughness there are in the format. And, I went and did my pre-release. I got to play that hound, the one that pings 2 things, and it was killing creatures left and right. You and I were talking about sideboarding in cards, main decking cards, how far can we push this? I think Liliana is going to be killing creatures a decent portion of the time. And even when she doesn't, she's going to neutralize some. I mean, -2/-1 is legit. Like, that even takes, relatively big creatures, a 3/3 and turns it into a 1/2 or whatever. It's not, it's pretty big effect on a creature.
Yeah, I love this card. I have it at an A. I almost think it's to the point where if you're not black going into pack 2 and you open this, you should take it and try to go black. I think that it might even sound silly to say, but I think one of the bigger mistakes that people make is they undervalue Planeswalkers in limited. And kind of exactly what you were saying is it almost doesn't even matter what they do. They're so unique and powerful and can just totally dictate the way that the game is played. It can reduce how effective your opponent's cards are just by the fact that they have to attack it and kill it, because they know that if they don't, you're just going to run away with the game.
Right.
The minus, like, you could reasonably in a game of limited pay 3 mana to just give a creature -1 on toughness and not have it be that bad. Paying 3 to kill a smaller creature is not terrible. And you could just pay 3 to just return a creature from your graveyard to hand. It's a little bit, poorly costed, but that's not an embarrassing effect. You're trading a card for a card. Move on with your life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But with this, it's going to gain life because of the fact that your opponent is forced to attack it and not attack you. You're often going to be killing creatures because they're going to have to make unfavorable attacks where you can eat some of their creatures. And in those situations where none of that happens, it just wins the game single-handedly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like a creature that, or excuse me, like let's say it was a sorcery that said 1 black, give a target, it's modal. Either give a creature -2, -1 until end of turn, or until the end of your next turn, or get a creature back from your graveyard.
That's a C.
That's a playable Magic card. Like,
oh, yeah.
Again, it's not aggressively costed. You're not like, wow, but you're like, you know what? That is flexible enough and has enough impact in the early and late part of the game that I would play that. And Liliana the Last Hope is way better than that. Like, You get to do it multiple times. If it is killing 1 toughness creatures, you're just mowing them down. Either ability still leaves you with a Planeswalker on the battlefield. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan. I'd give Liliana the Last Hope an A.
Yep.
I think she's fantastic, too. Only 3 mana. Ugh, that's scary.
Bargain barrel, discount price.
Indeed. Newscraft Mob is next. It's 4 black for a 0/0 zombie, but we, of course, know that there's more to the story. When it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's a 5/5 for 6. And whenever you cast a spell, you remove a +1/+1 counter from Newscraft Mob. If you do, you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield.
For the record, it says whenever a player casts a spell.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So even if your opponent plays a spell, it's going to... Wow. Like, even if your opponent goes, reduced to ashes, it's going to be a 4/4 and you get a 1/1 before it dies, which makes it a little bit better.
You get a 2/2. Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah. Huh. Which one would I rather have? Because those... zombies are going to be jumping off of this thing pretty quickly. If you've ever had a card that cared about whenever anybody casts a spell, and to be clear, a spell is anything, creatures, enchantments, sorceries, all of it. Mm-hmm. They go quickly.
They're going to go fast.
Which I think is not bad though, right?
Yeah, it's effectively 5 2/2s for 6 mana. It's going to play differently.
A couple of turns later, yeah.
It's going to play a little bit differently and uniquely, but a lot of the times those creatures aren't going to be ones that can attack anyways.
Exactly. We're talking about a pretty late game play.
Yeah, by turn 6. So it's like, if you play this and then they play a card and you play a card, it's a 3/3. You pretty much can't attack with it. You're just going to hope to have the counters run out. This card is probably a C+. It's not a bomb rare. It's not a premium card. I would definitely take any of the good black uncommons that we talked about last week over it. But it is powerful. You're going to get 5 2/2s. It's good. It's a really good rate. You kind of have to work a little bit for it because of, maybe your opponent doesn't do anything and you don't do anything. It's a 5/5. That's not bad. I do like the fact that it's resilient to removal.
I like that too. One thing that I think about too is that if I am going to throw this card into combat, you kind of always have to assume it's at least 1 notch lower than whatever it's at, right?
Yep, unless your opponent has no cards in hand or they're tapped out. You have to accept that as a possibility.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this one. I think Newscraft Mob is going to see some play. I think it's going to be a card you're going to play in your black deck, but I'm taking Murder over it.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that's worth noting about this card is it generates a powerful effect as a creature and then goes to your graveyard. So any of the Macabre Waltz, Rise from the Grave.
Good point.
The new what's the 2 mana one called that you return as Cemetery Recruitment.
Yeah.
So if you just run all the counters off this and then Cemetery Recruitment, draw a card, play it again, run all the counters off again. Now you're talking about 10 2/2s, and you paired it with a throwaway common. So
I like that. Also, this is resilient to some of the enchantment based removal we've seen, just in the sense that you spit off a few more zombies.
Yeah.
That doesn't really solve their problem.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Sleep paralysis it? I don't think so.
Exactly. I'll make a zombie, and then there's more to come. I guess I'll go. I need to see this one in play. I'm going to go B- on Newscraft Mob and then I'll, subject to change as we see it.
Yeah, it's really unique, peculiar. It's interesting card type. So it could totally range anywhere from C+ to A- based on how the format plays, how these zombie decks play out. So really hard to evaluate a card like this, but it's pretty safe to say that if you're black, you should probably take it when you see it and then always play it.
Yeah. Oath of Liliana is next. It's 2 and a black for a legendary enchantment at rare. When Oath of Liliana enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. That's the main part. There is more. At the beginning of each end step, if a planeswalker entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. So we, for most purposes, we can ignore that second chunk of text. So what we have here is 3 mana for a sorcery speed edict effect, meaning that it forces your opponent to sacrifice a creature. Now, if you haven't played these before, your opponent gets to choose, and that is a major downside. I'm not a big fan of this type of effect in Limited because there are just too many incidental creatures, and the fact that you let your opponent choose really hurts the power level on a card like Oath of Liliana. And it's 3 mana too. It's not even like, a particularly good deal.
Yeah, I almost always play with cards like this, and I've been getting burned in this format. Like, To the Slaughter has been extremely bad for me.
Yes, it's not good.
I have it at a D. I think it has matchups where, like, if your opponent's red-green, they're not going to have tokens as often. Usually they're going to be investing 2, 3, 4 mana in their creatures, and you're going to get a fine rate. It's a pretty bad card. I would usually only sideboard it in if I was confident that it was going to trade for a creature of similar casting cost. And I would note that if I had even one Planeswalker in my deck, I would play with this card. I think it's the value you get, even though small. It does turn it from a card that's kind of bad to a card that's like actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And remember also, if you happen to be pairing this with a color that does have those enchantment-based removal, your sleep paralysis and the new pacifism effect.
Oh yeah, of course.
Be careful for that.
Total disaster.
Yeah, it is an unmitigated. Like, it usually just means that your Oath of Liliana, once drawn, stays in your hand, and that is unacceptable.
That's a huge point that people should remember and never forget. That is like it turned. Yeah, if you have one sleep paralysis or one collective restraint, what's the white one?
I don't remember what it's called.
The new pacifism. If you have any card that
choking restraints, it's called.
Even if you end up just putting like a dead weight on their 3/4 or something, it's like any enchantment that's going to sit on your opponent's creature. It makes this card totally useless. I've done that before where you go like, sleep paralysis, that's a good card. Oh, Oath of Liliana, that's a good card. And then you draw both of your good cards in a game and you're like, what have I done?
Yes, I've definitely done that before too.
It's bad. It's really
all right.
bad.
Yeah, we'll go D on Oath of Liliana.
Yeah.
Moving down, we've got Stromkirk Condemned, which is black for a 2/2 vampire horror at rare. And it's got an activated ability. You can discard a card, and vampires you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. You can do this once per turn.
Yeah, pretty good card.
It's fine.
I'm gonna say C+.
Yeah.
It's like black for a 2/2 that's gonna play as a 3/3 when blocked, which means it's not gonna get blocked as often. That's a pretty nice card.
It's about par for the course, right? Because you can't always turn to it anyway. Yeah.
Yep. The black is a pretty steep cost.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna want I would maybe play this with 8 swamps in my deck, but I wouldn't be happy about it, and you're going to want 9 or 10.
Yeah, for sure.
It does have the upside of pumping all your vampires and being a madness enabler, but it's going to be unique to your deck. It's not like because it's rare, it's hard to come up. It's not like you're going to want to first pick it and build around that, because the reward even then is small.
No.
So I would generally lean towards rating it lower, but acknowledging that there's going to be some decks where it's going to be like one of your better cards.
Yeah, to me, this is an uncommon power level card that just has a little bit too much going on to be put at uncommon, so it's a rare. But yeah, I don't think that Stromkirk Condemned is the type of card that you need to go out of your way for. But yeah, if you have enough vampires and or madness spells, then it's going to earn its keep. It is a free madness enabler can be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Oh, we've got Tree of Perdition, which is 3 and a black for a 0/13 plant at Mythic Rare. It's got Defender. So we've got an 0/13 with Defender for 4 mana. Before we get into the activated ability, how do you feel about that?
Just 0/13 for 4?
Yeah.
Bad. I think it's weak.
Okay.
Would be a card I would generally avoid, just because putting a card in your deck for the sole purpose of blocking, but then it can't block flyers, like every point of toughness you add beyond like 5 is just might as well be 0.
Yeah.
Like a 0/10 and a 0/13 are just the same card.
Exactly.
So it doesn't. I know it's a big number, but it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm also in that same camp, but I know that some people aren't. So it does have an activated ability, and it's really strange. You can tap it to exchange target opponent's life total with Tree of Perdition's toughness.
Mm-hmm.
This is an exchange.
Yes. A fair exchange. A fair and reasonable exchange.
Yeah. So it's not just that, like, if your opponent's at 20, their life total becomes 13, and you're like, haha, I did 7 to you by tapping my defender plant or whatever. But also, Tree of Perdition becomes a 0-20.
Yeah.
Which is very strange, and it only can hit opponents, so no, you can't do something where you're thinking that, oh, I'll gain 12. You know, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Is there any way to abuse this?
Well, the best way to abuse it is cast it on turn 4 and use it immediately. Because then it's just deal 7 to the opponent, and you leave behind a totally passable creature.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be low power as investment for a blocker, but like an O20 wall for 4 is a bad card, but an O20 wall for 4 that when it comes into play deals 7 damage to your opponent, that's not a bad card.
No,
that's a big bonus.
Yeah.
So
God, it's so conditional, right? Because it only, like, if you have any other, if you've put down a 2-drop and a 3-drop and they've attacked a couple of times, then your Tree of Perdition is not doing 7; it's doing 2.
Yeah, but almost all of the time it's in your opening hand. You can play the game where you trade off with your early 2-drops instead of attacking and getting attacked back.
Right.
So and in most games of Limited, most of the cards you see are in your opening hand. The games don't last that long.
Right.
So I think it's a good card. I give it a B-. I could see easily if I'm like a red-green beatdown deck with a bunch of creatures, pump spells, and bigger creatures. It's like just splashing this because I know that a lot of my creatures are going to cost 3 and 5, and if I can deal the 7 and then kind of keep going from there, I think it's reasonable. But it's not a bomb rare. It's not unpassable. It's not where you have to play it. If I was like a really strong blue-black control deck, I would try to not play it.
Yeah, I have this way. I fail to see where I'm really getting my edge for this card. I was going to give it a D.
Yeah.
Assume I'm not going to play it most of the time, but maybe there's some scenarios where I want to. I mean, people have talked about, comboing it with Triskaidekaphobia, which is kind of cute, but that's,
if I had this and Triskaidekaphobia, I would just 100% play them both in any black deck.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. It's just, we're talking about a rare that you get out of only one pack and a mythic rare out of the first two.
Could come up if people think that both cards are bad, but yeah, it is rare.
Yeah, and I do think both cards are pretty bad. Yeah, I'm just off of Tree of Perdition. Somebody's going to have to beat me with this stupid card before I start valuing it any higher than a D. Now, this next card I do value higher than a D. It's called Voldaren Pariah, and it is 3 black for a 3/3 flying vampire horror at rare. It's got madness, but her madness cost is steep. It's black.
Mm-hmm.
It's asking a lot. That's roughly comparable to 3 black, as far as your average deck when you're actually going to get it. But she's also got an activated ability. Sacrifice 3 other creatures and you transform Voldaren Pariah. She becomes Abolisher of Bloodlines, which is an Eldrazi vampire, a 6/5 flying, and when this creature transforms into Abolisher of Bloodlines, target opponent sacrifices 3 creatures.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow. This card's great.
Yeah, this card is great. The thing worth noting about the madness is usually madness is used as a way to discount the cost of your spell, but because the color requirement is so steep, I mean, you could do it turn 3 with the 1 and a black 2/2 discard a card, give it flying, which, like, if you're a base black and you're beat down, like, that could come up. But
Stromkirk Condemned into Voldaren Pariah, anyone?
Very strong, yeah. The primary use of the madness on this card is playing it at instant speed, which is not terribly irrelevant. You could either play it at instant speed to block a creature, which I do like. I think it's good and worth doing, even with a card this powerful.
Uh-huh.
And you could respond to a removal spell by just sacking that creature and your other creatures to flip it right away.
Yeah, and the crazy part is that all of this stuff is instant speed, right?
Yep, none of it says sorcery.
Right, so like you could madness in a creature, sacrifice 3 other creatures, transform it, they have to sacrifice 3 creatures. This could all happen in combat.
Your opponent could... You block a 4/4 with like 2 3/3s or 2 2/2s, and then they play a pump spell. You could respond by madnessing this in, sacking your creatures that would die anyways, killing the creature that they put a pump spell on. I mean, it's a bit far-fetched, but
it is. But
it's
I mean,
an option available to you.
It's true. And Abolisher of Bloodlines is incredibly scary. It's a 6/5 with flying. I mean, you could. There are definitely conceivable scenarios where you play this on turn 5 or turn 6 and just immediately fire it off.
Of course,
and
this
just
is a great card.
Yeah,
great.
It's a little all in, but yeah, I love the card.
It's not even that all in because you sacrifice 3 creatures to have them sacrifice 3 creatures.
That's a good point. So if they use removal on it, then you're at parity. You're still cards even.
You're almost always going to be cards up because you decide which creatures you sacrifice, and you can just sacrifice low power cheap creatures and kill all the creatures your opponent have put into play by that point in the game.
Yeah.
So you're going to be getting favorable exchanges almost all of the time that you use this card.
Yeah,
and then when they kill it, it's like you just have to rely on the Macabre Waltz type stuff to get you out of it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the madness on that is pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. That's legit.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. All right. So Vol'jaren Pariah, I'm going to give it an A.
Yeah, I like it.
I just think that card's amazing.
Yeah.
That was actually our last rare for black, which brings us to red. And a couple of cards. Here's the first one I've actually had experience with. I've been lucky. I opened it in the pre-release and the pre-release. It's called Assembled Alphas. Ooh. And it's 5 and a red for a 5/5 wolf at rare. And it's got a lot going on with combat. It says, whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, Assembled Alphas deals 3 damage to that creature and 3 damage to that creature's controller. This card, it's weird when you read it because it covers all the bases that you want it to cover. So when you attack with it, if they block, it's going to do 3 damage to the creature that blocks it and 3 damage to the controller. If they double block, both creatures take 3 damage and the controller takes 6.
So when you double block it, instead of not blocking it and taking 5, you just take 6?
You just take 6 instead, and you have to double block it with 2 creatures with 4 toughness or more to have them even survive that scenario.
Yeah.
And if they attack you, it's the same thing. You block one of their creatures, it's going to take 3, and they're going to take 3 to the dome as well. So basically the way it plays off is that it's just untouchable in combat. I have not had it enter a situation where it entered combat and it didn't win. Yeah. Basically what happens is that it's unblockable, and that people, unless they're killing you that turn or have an insurmountable advantage, are not going to attack into it either, which is fantastic. I mean, what else do you want? It's also a 5/5 for 6, which is reasonable. It's a nice quick clock because, sometimes you see effects like this on cards that don't need to be blocked, right? It's like, oh, it's a 3-powered creature, which is fine, but like, the option becomes just never block the thing because you're just losing your team and taking damage anyway. So why bother? But Assembled Alphas at 5 power is enough to, get in there and really pressure your opponent's life total and force them to start like chump blocking and taking 3 instead of 5, losing their creature, etc. So I'm a big fan. I mean, look, this isn't the type of card at 6 mana 5/5 that you jump out as just like, oh my God, what a super bomb. If this costs 5 mana, it would be in that range for me, but the 6 mana brings it a little bit more into the fairness end of the things. But still, in the decks that I played it in, again, people just refuse to enter combat with it. That's a very good card when it has 5 power.
Yeah, I actually don't know exactly how to evaluate this card, and it looks pretty unique, so I was just going to trust and believe whatever you said, given that you played with it twice.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a B+. I just think the card is very, very solid, but not one of those dominating takeover, not quite that A range that we see, out of Archangel Avacyn and, some of the cards we're going to see later.
Sounds correct.
Bedlam Reveler is next. This card's really interesting. It's been getting a lot of chatter on social media and podcasts and stuff too. It's 6 red for a 3/4 Devil Horror. It's rare, and it costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And it has prowess. So we've got an 8 mana prowess that can be somewhat cheaper and limited. And it's got more. When it enters the battlefield, you discard your whole hand and draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
This has to be one of the hardest cards to evaluate ever.
I'm going to say in general, this is quite good. I'm leaning towards a B+, maybe just a B. The thing is, cards in Limited that allow you to draw cards at the risk of losing your hand are almost always good. They've made a few rares over time that do something similar, and they're almost always underrated because people don't want to lose the cards that they have in their hand, or they think the games don't play out like that all that often. But they really do play out like that often. You usually play every card in your hand, and then you play off the top. And if you play every card in your hand, and then you play this, a 3/4 that draws 3 cards is very good.
Right.
The discount is going to have to be pretty significant. It's going to usually have to cost 6, maybe 7. If it's costing 6 or 5, this is just a good card that you should always play.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and it's tough to draw 2 instants and sorceries in a game unless you have like 9 in your deck, like to reliably draw 2 by the time you have this.
That's the question I have. Is it a build around? Is Bedlam Reveler the type of card that you would put into any red deck? Like, let's say you had 4 instants and or sorceries in your deck. Would you play a Bedlam Reveler?
I imagine it would be playable, but pretty bad.
Okay, and then, but if you were able to build around it where you were one of those 8 or 9 instants and sorcery style decks, then it's just a bomb in your deck, right?
Yeah, it's very good at that point. And even I think in the middle you still want to play it. Like I imagine like my black-red heavy removal decks, because when you put a lot of removal in your deck, it just prolongs the game because it makes it so you each trade resources down until you have very few cards left, and then you're mostly drawing off the top, but with both players at 20. So even if I have like dead weights and the new enchantment removal, which obviously look like they don't play with this card very well, they still play well because they allow you to trade resources out of your hand, and then the cost of losing your hand is much lower, and you're allowing yourself to have more time in the game to draw lands to play this. So yeah, I do like this card. I think it's definitely playable. I think you're excited to put it in most decks.
Yeah, I like it at B+ as well. It might even be a little better. Bedlam Reveler at 6 mana, I would be really high on it. At 7, it's okay. 8, I'm like, that's just, you're just not going to cast it often enough. But I do think you're going to get it down into that 6-7 range often enough to make it good.
Yeah, I like it.
Collective Defiance is 1 red for a sorcery at rare. It's got Escalate for just 1 mana. So 3 different modes to choose from beyond the first. So target player discards all the cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards. Collective Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature. Wow. Collective Defiance deals 3 damage to target opponent.
Yeah, I had this card at the pre-release, and it was very good for me.
Was it great?
I think it's about an A-. It's
so
not like
how did it play out normally? Was it like kill your biggest creature, do 3 to you for 4 mana?
Yeah, kill creature, deal 3 was the most common mode, but there was at least one game I played where I used the discard your hand, draw that many cards ability, and it was awesome for me.
Did you target yourself?
Yeah, I was black-red, beat down, my highest casting cost card was 5 mana, and so I had drawn 8 lands, so I just knew once I got to 4 mana, if I did it on myself, turning 4 of the lands I drew into new different cards at almost no cost was just super strong for me. So
that's great.
Yeah, I like this card. And the thing is, it's not the reason you put it in your deck, but it gives you an option when you play that can be a really powerful effect. So because it has that, it doesn't make the card much better, but it makes it better in that the select few games where you want that, you can have that, and it has a high influence on deciding the game.
And I like Collective Defiance at A- anyway, just because if you just presented it to me as 2 red, does 4 damage to a creature, 3 damage to an opponent at sorcery speed, I'm just like very in on that card.
Yeah, it's like part Bathe in Dragonfire, part Chandra's Outrage, with like added versatility for being flexible, and the Winds of Change part of the card helps it a lot too. That's just really good card.
Yeah, Collective Defiance seems really strong to me.
Yeah.
Next card is called Hanweir Garrison. It's also quite strong. It's 2 and a red for a 2/3 human soldier at rare. Whenever Hanweir Garrison attacks, you get 2 1/1 red human creature tokens tapped and attacking on the battlefield. Now, it also has an extra ability that it happens to meld with Hanweir Battlements, which is the land that can give haste. You can pay 5 mana if you have this and the other one. The thing is that they're both rare, and so the chance of getting both of them is really not high. Also, Hanweir Garrison, which of course we're going to talk about in a second here, is very good on its own, so it's not the kind of card that's just going to be going around the table. If you do first pick one and the land gets opened, you actually have a decent chance of getting both, just because the Hanweir Battlements isn't particularly good, so people are going to be passing it. I don't know. I don't know how much weight to put on that, because the truth is that we don't really need to. Hanweir Garrison's very good on its own. A 2/3 for 3 is like fine, but if it can attack even just once or twice, you're starting to build up quite an army.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. I'm pretty. I lean towards giving it a B or a B+. The thing is, it's such a powerful ability that when it goes well for you, the game ends really quickly because it forces your opponent to get in combat with it. So if you have combat tricks or removal, you're almost certainly going to be able to do it again. Yep. Once you're doing it again, you're paying 0 mana for the ability, and you're going to get 4 1/1 creatures.
Oh, God.
I mean, the downside of getting the 1/1s is that they're forced to attack into potentially bigger creatures which eat them, but you're still going to do damage with the ones that get through. You're still going to do damage with this. And like I said, you just, even like one pump spell or removal can make it so that those bigger creatures that are happy to block just die, and the game goes really well for you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hammer Garrison as well. I have it in that B to B plus range. Yeah. Same thing as you. And then it does, look, it's not a downside that it happens to meld with Handware Battlements. And if you can make that happen, I mean, you can get a Writhing Township, which is a 7/4 trample haste that gives you 2 3/2s that are tapped and attacking when you swing with it. Sure.
Yeah, it's good. If I had this card and I saw the land, I would take it unless there was premium removal or like super good uncommon. I would take it just because when it melds, it's insane.
Yeah, it is completely insane.
You attack with like what looks like 13 power. Yeah.
Well, you need to get to like 6 mana to do it or whatever.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But still, it is still completely absurd, though. It is 13 power, 7 of it's trample.
And the land is good.
Yeah, the land does things.
Pay a red to give a guy haste. I mean, if I was a 2-color beatdown deck, I'd be happy to play that in a 17-land deck. It wouldn't be great, but it would be really strong in some kinds of games. Like, if both people are in top deck mode, no hand, no creatures, drawing and giving a creature haste, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, not too bad. We'll talk about that land in a little bit, too. Yeah, it's 3 red, and tap it to do the activation. Next is Harmless Offering. 2 and a red for a sorcery at rare. Target opponent gains control of target permanent you control.
Yeah, the color shifted donate. I played a pre-release this weekend, and my promo card was Harmless Offering.
I'm sorry.
And I struggled to even find a card that was worse.
Yeah. This just has to be one of the worst cards in the set.
Yeah, it's an F minus. Under no circumstances do you ever put this card in your deck, and if you ever put it in your deck, it's pretty rare that it would even have an outcome on the game, effect on the outcome of the game.
Nope, just don't play it.
Just literally does nothing.
Yep. The thing is, people love to construct the scenarios where it donates something that is bad for their opponent, but the problem with that is that even that is far-fetched because you still have to construct. You still have to actually make that happen in the game where you've drawn, resolved, and even then, I don't think that's even a thing here. So yeah, I'm just out on Harmless Offering F. Impetuous Devils is 2 red for a 6/1 devil. It's rare. It's got trample and haste. At the beginning of the end step, you have to sacrifice it, so you're only getting it for a turn. And when it attacks, up to 1 target creature defending player controls blocks it this combat if able.
Yeah, I saw this card for the first time at the pre-release, and when I saw it, I went, wow, this card is really good. Mm-hmm. My first snap judgment on the card, I would have said it's a B+, because most of the time when you play it, you're going to kill a creature, and you're going to deal some amount of damage. So dealing 4 to a creature and 2 to the player for 4 mana, that's a great rate on a card.
Oh, yeah.
And it can go up from there. You can deal 3 to the opponent, deal 4 to the opponent, depending on what you kill. I'm like, oh, it's removal, and it also has the, you can Macabre Waltz, do it again, Rise from the Grave, do it again. It's like kill your creature, deal 2, kill your creature, deal 3, like multiple turns in a row. Mm-hmm. But what came up for me is one game my opponent had a Thalia, so my guy just came to play tapped.
Oh, no.
Yeah. One game my opponent had
Doesn't Thalia have first strike also?
Yeah, it has first strike, which is really bad. That happened in a different game. A guy had a 4/4 first strike. I was like, I can no longer cast this card. That
is brutal.
Yeah, and one game my opponent had the Tapper, the 1 and a white tap target creature.
Tap target non-human.
Mm-hmm. Tap it. It just dies at the end of the turn. It's pretty rough. So I think there's upside there, but it's really weak against white decks because of all of that stuff that can happen. First strike especially is just brutal. And like if your opponent can just dual shot it, or they can just, use some kind of small, I don't know. I like the card, but it's much worse than I thought it was at first.
Yeah, I actually feel the exact same way. I like the card as well. It does have a powerful effect. I think I'm still probably running it until, like in my red decks, until proven otherwise, like meaning if my opponent does play some of the cards that you just mentioned, I'd be more likely to take out my Impetuous Devils. But I've played against it, and it's like, that's really good. Like, I'm taking 4 damage. I'm losing a creature. That's pretty strong. I have no idea where to grade it.
Yeah, I like it at about a C plus, but with the
right.
note that you should sideboard it out pretty liberally.
All right, I like that too. Mirror Wing Dragon is a mythic dragon. There's always one of these floating around. 3 red for a 4/5 with flying. Thumbs up. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Mirror Wing Dragon, that player copies that spell for each other creature he or she controls that the spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures.
Yeah.
What the hell?
A 4/5 flying for 5 is a great card. Some of the time this is going to be a bonus ability, and more often it's going to be a downside.
The extra ability, you mean?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe not.
Well,
Maybe
so let's think of it. Let's just walk it through. So the first case scenario that when you cast your big mythic dragon is that you're worried it's going to get removed. So if your opponent says, "Oh, I will, target your Mirror Wing Dragon with a spot removal, murder your Mirror Wing Dragon." It says whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only that, so that does that. That player copies that spell for each other creature he or she controls that spell could target, and it targets all of them. So that would murder their entire team.
Yeah, if I wanted to murder my opponent's Mirror Wing Dragon, I'd be agreeing to murdering all my own creatures.
Okay, so that's pretty cool for the Mirror Wing Dragon player.
Yeah.
Now, also though, it says whenever a player, so that means me too. So if I have a Mirror Wing Dragon and I say I'd like to cast Giant Growth on it and give it +3/+3 until end of turn, it's also going to target all my other creatures, right? Player casts an instant or Mirror Wing Dragon. That player copies that spell for each other creature he or she controls.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's just mostly upside.
Well, but then what if my opponent decides that they want to Giant Growth my Mirror Wing Dragon?
Yeah, that's when you get in trouble.
They attack with 5 things or whatever.
Yeah, you attack me with your Mirror Wing Dragon, and then on the next turn, I Grizzly Mutation it. All my guys are huge and have lifelink now. It's like, you can definitely get burned by playing with this card, but almost all the time I'm red, I'm going to put this card in my deck just because it's such a good rate.
The stats are so good, yeah.
It's somewhat resilient to removal because of them getting all their stuff blown up.
Well, I think it's worth it. I think it's definitely worth it. It just means there's some downside here. Yeah. B+, A-, like it's still really good.
Yeah, I'm in the B+B range. I'm pretty averse to putting cards in my deck that can contribute to me losing, and this
directly.
This definitely does fall in that category, but I think it's just so powerful you should play it.
All right, B+ for Mirror Wing Dragon. Another mythic rare is next. Nahiri's Wrath is 2 and a red for a sorcery, and it says as an additional cost to cast Nahiri's Wrath, discard X cards. Nahiri's Wrath deals damage equal to the total converted mana cost of the discarded cards to each of up to X target creatures and or planeswalkers. Wow.
Yeah, this card is amazing.
That's insane.
I think it's just the best card in the set.
Oh, really? You think it's that good?
Yeah. The thing is, the cost is so low and the upside is so high. If I just discard one card that costs 4 mana and 2 or 3 lands, I can do 4 damage to 4 target creatures. It's just 3 mana. I discarded a couple of lands and 1 spell, and I did 16 damage.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's just doing so much so quickly. Like, you almost can't lose when you draw this card because it does so much damage to so many creatures. Like, if your opponent's just not playing creatures, okay, it's going to be a little bit worse. But in any normal game of Limited, it's just crazy how strong this card is.
That is absurd. Yeah, and for only 3 mana, that is completely off the charts. I mean, it almost reads destroy all your opponent's creatures, right?
Yeah. Yep. You have to have a spell in your hand and more than one card that isn't that spell.
Wow.
But again, anytime it's in your opening hand, you can't fail to meet those requirements.
No.
And as long as you're playing a game naturally, like you have a couple of lands that you're not playing, you draw this, you're 1 card away from killing 4 creatures. You just have to draw a card.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. This card is really powerful. Unless I'm forgetting an even stronger card, I think it's actually the best card in the set.
All right, Nahiri's Wrath, A+.
Yeah, A+ for me.
Welcome to the team, Nahiri's Wrath. That is amazing. Stromkirk Occultist is next. It's 2 and a red for a 3/2 vampire horror. It's rare. It's got trample. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. Of course, you do have to pay any costs, associated with it. It's also got Madness for 1 and a red, which is a nice hey, you'll take a Madness. Like, again, Madness isn't the type of ability that makes or breaks a card, generally speaking, but it's a nice to have. It's like, sure, it's cheaper too.
Madness on this card is much better because of a card like Insolent Neonate. Because that's a card that's already pretty good to put in your deck anyways. If you just play it turn one, you attack for like 4 damage, and then later in the game, you discard a land, which is as if you're not even discarding a card at all, and it basically just cycles.
Yeah.
So that's a card that I'm happy to put in my red decks as long as I have a little bit of Madness. And the Madness with this card, when you draw both those in your opening hand, is very good. Yeah. You can go play it. End of turn, you can play this thing. Even you can just play it and block like a 1-2 or 1-3. Not that that's going to come up much, but whatever. And then when you hit with this card, it's like an Ophidian or a Scroll Thief, know?
You're drawing, and
it's a Scroll Thief with Trample.
Cards. Yeah.
So
no, I like it.
Even in the situations when your opponent blocks this with a 2-2, you deal 1 damage and get a new card. Yeah, this card is great. I have it at about a B, only because at the end of the day, it is still a 3-2.
Yeah, I do too, though. I mean, the thing is that every line of text on this card is upside. The vampire, the fact that it's a vampire is minor upside. Madness is upside. Trample on a 3-2 for 3 is already fine. And then the ability that when you hit is a good ability. I mean, that is just a good ability. And we're tacking this all onto a card that we would probably include in our deck anyway as a 3-2 trample for 3. So Stromkirk Occultist, I like it at B. Very good card. That's it for the red cards, which is going to move us on to green before we circle back to white and then get to our gold and colorless cards. The first green card is Eldritch Evolution. It's 1 green for a sorcery at rare. It says, as an additional cost to cast Eldritch Evolution, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less, where X is 2 plus a sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, shuffle your library, and exile Eldritch Evolution. There's a lot going on here. I know that a lot of people have their eye on this for constructed. I'm curious where you come down on it for limited. Basically, you're sacrificing a creature and upgrading it 2 slots on the mana curve. And also, of course, getting to tutor and search out a creature in the process.
Yeah, in general, I don't like this card. I don't like it for all the reasons that I said last week. I didn't like Emerge because sacrificing a creature to make a new creature comes with risk of it being bounced or it being killed and you getting 2 for 1. And this one's even worse because it doesn't have the option of just pay 8 mana for it. So those at least said some of the time you get to dictate how you play this card. This is you always sacrifice this card.
Yeah.
I want to say it's unplayable, but there's enough random stuff going on there where if I had a creature that when I tutored for it, I was going to win the game almost all the time that I put it into play, I would play this card. But even that's rare. And I mean, maybe if I had like 3 copies of Foul Emissary, I would play this because I would get a 3-2, I'd go up the curve. I don't know. I'd have to have a really strong incentive for sacrificing or a really strong incentive for tutoring. But pretty much I would not play it.
I mean, we can sweeten the pot a little bit by remembering that there are a significant number of those, kind of expendable cards, the O2 that makes a 3-2, those type of cards that are like kind of meant to be sacrificed. So if you were going to be doing the whole Emerge thing anyway, Eldritch Evolution might have a better spot. Just because you're going to have more fodder for it that you really don't care. Like you're effectively upgrading a blank on the board into something that actually matters.
The upside's not even that high, though. You're just paying 3 and sacking a card you invested 4 in to replicate a 6 mana card in your deck. But you could just wait a few turns and play that card. And the downside of this card is that it's just uncastable.
Yes, there are times when you just can't do anything. Yeah, I'm actually not super high on Eldritch Evolution myself. Also, just because it's really hard to get a limited deck where everything lines up exactly the way you want. I mean, I guess if you have a bomb in your deck that costs 6 or less and you're running a couple of the O2s, then maybe you can run the Eldritch Evolution. But this does not come across as a bomb-worthy card for me at all either.
Yeah, if I was in charge, I would give it an F, but I'm going to give it a D- with the optimism that it's possible.
All right, yeah, I was going to give it a D. Emrakul's Evangel is 2 and a green for a 3-2 human horror. It's rare. And you can tap it and sacrifice the Evangel and any number of non-Eldrazi creatures. If you do, you get a 3-2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token onto the battlefield for each creature sacrificed this way.
Yeah, it's got a lot of words, but it's not. It's saying a lot, but it's not really telling you anything.
True to its name, the
Yeah,
Emrakul's Evangel.
it's just
Selling a
man.
lot of snake oil here. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I don't like it.
I don't really like it that much either. It does not protect you from wrath effects. I thought when I first read it that it did. And then I thought, wait, no, it doesn't do anything. That you just have a bunch of Eldrazi sitting there that die instead.
Man, because of summoning sickness, it's like you have to play it, and then you have to get it ready, and at that point, it's going to make it so that targeted removal is going to be a little bit worse on your cards.
God, but not even that much either, right? I mean,
No.
minorly, like, if you want to attack with your Emrakul's Evangel, then you can't activate it at that point because it's a tap ability, so that's just not a thing.
Yeah, but because it's a 3-mana 3/2, I'm almost always going to put it in my deck, and it has some upside of like you can sack a creature that had sleep paralysis on it. If you get an unfavorable combat because of them playing a trick, you can sack it and kind of stay card neutral while they lose a card. Excuse me, but yeah. In general, it's bad, but I imagine I'm always going to play it because it has a unique effect that could produce card.
I agree, and on a body that you'd play anyway. One thing to note is that you do have to sacrifice it as well. So. Yep. You know, if they sleep paralysis one of your creatures, you can sacrifice that creature and Evangel, and you're getting a 3/2 back on the Evangel, so it's basically neutral anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see what our next rare is. It looks like it's Ishkana Graph Widow. Oh, yeah. It's 4 and a green for a 3/5 legendary creature spider at Mythic Rare. It's got reach. So a 3/5 reach for 5. And you can also pay 6 and a black to have target opponent lose 1 life for each spider you control. So Ishkana, of course, counts as 1 spider. But also there's Delirium. If you've got Delirium, you get 3 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach when it enters the battlefield.
Yeah, this card is really strong.
There's a lot going on here, yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable giving it an A. I think a 3/5 reach for 5 is an above average card for limited.
Agreed.
And once you get to Delirium, you're very closely mirroring Cloud Goat Ranger, which was like often when printed better than a lot of the rares in the format. And the last ability, it just says you have a card that once you achieve Delirium, the most likely thing is that you get into a board stall or you just run them over. And the last ability just directly damages the opponent for mana, which is exactly what you want in a board stall.
When you're sitting there behind a bunch of beefy reach creatures, yeah.
I like it. This card is great. I have it in an A. In a deck that can consistently get Delirium, it might as well just be an A+. Like,
for sure.
When you get Vessel of Nascency and you can get Delirium faster and dig through your deck, you have a card that's going to come up more often. It's just very good.
Yeah, I have Ishkana Graph Widow at A as well, because in a Delirium deck, it's an A+, like you said. In a not Delirium deck, it's probably like an A- or maybe a little bit lower than that, a B+ or something like that. A 3/5 reach for 5 that can never make spiders is like fine, right? Like that's like B-.
You wouldn't cut it, but it's nothing special.
It's nothing special, but if you have any chance of getting to that point, it's amazing. And also, I like the idea of grinding somebody 1 life point at a time for 7 mana.
Oh yeah, for that way,
yeah. Do it the hard way, buddy.
Why not? If you got the mana to spare.
What a terrible way to lose a game of Magic. Permeating Mass is next. This is one of the coolest cards I've seen design-wise in a while. You know, you and I, Owen, after having played for a long time, have kind of seen a lot of this, right? We're like, oh, I get it. You took that idea and mixed it with this idea. And now this one is new to me. I just like, what? It's a 1/3 for green. It's a spirit. It's called Permeating Mass. It's a rare. It says, whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, that creature becomes a copy of Permeating Mass, which then, of course, would deal damage to another creature at some point and turn that also into a copy until everything's just copies of Permeating Mass everywhere.
Yeah, the tough thing about this card is often when it is dealing combat damage to a creature that you'd want to be turned into Permeating Mass, it's often just going to kill your creature.
Yes.
Kill your mass. So
is that bad for you?
It's not great. I mean,
they now have a stupid Permeating Mass. It's a 1/3.
You could just chump block a 7/7 with it and get some kind of mileage. I mean, I think in general, it's not a very good card. I would not want to play with it. I probably have it about a D because 1 mana for a 1/3 is bad, and the ability is significantly and noticeably worse than Death Touch.
It is. It feels
killing,
like bad death touch to me.
Yeah, instead of killing a creature, you're turning it into a mass, which can be used against you. It can turn one of your creatures into a mass. So, I don't know. It's playable, but
it's so weird.
Yeah. Like, in the end, for me, it's just low power. You're paying 1 mana for 1 power, and you're hoping to get favorable combats with it, which may or may not happen.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Just that, like, it keeps going and going. And
my opponent cast it against me at the pre-release, and he put an equipment on it, the +2/+2, and I was like, no, you're kind of getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't want to rumble with it, so...
I'm going to make an always watching permeating mass deck.
Yeah, I mean, there's something there, but I'm not interested.
Yeah. All right. I have no idea where to grade it. I know it's cool. I do not know how good it is, so I'm just going to go with your grade and give it a D until I see further evidence.
Yeah.
Spirit of the Hunt is next. This card's good. It's 1 green for a 3/3 Wolf Spirit at rare. It's got Flash, which, yep, I'm in for that. 3/3 for 3 is already good. Give it Flash, and it's excellent. And when it enters the battlefield, each other creature you control that's a wolf or a werewolf gets +0/+3 until end of turn, which to me isn't a big game changer, but is a welcome addition. Like, why not? But 3/3 Flash for 3, I'm already pretty high on.
Yeah, for me, the second ability is a game changer, only because often you get to dictate the terms of combat when you're green, low curve, aggressive deck. And if I just attack with the 3/3 wolf and you block with a 3/3, I can flash this in, and it's sort of like I had a Necrotal.
Yeah, or, that's great.
In the same way that if you attack me with a 2/2, I flash this in, I can block.
Mm-hmm.
I can you can use this card to kill creatures because of combat.
And you're saying the toughness bump is one of those ways.
Is one of the ways you can get that.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the better ways you can get it, because often when you're the attacking player, your opponent's tapped out. So it's even lower risk.
Well, I really like Spirit of the Hunt straight up, and then with the extra ability to get cards. It doesn't quite reach the A range for me.
Yeah, I like it at a B+.
I think so too, right? Like it's like a very solid B with some really good upside of occasionally nabbing a card or a creature from your opponent.
It's efficient, it's versatile, and the ability is very good, because you can also, they try to like throttle your creature, reduce to ashes, any kind of conditional target.
Wow, great point.
Yeah, it's just a good card.
God, if you blank a 5 mana removal spell with Spirit of the Hunt,
the total blowout, and it's not even that far outside the realm of possibility.
Not at all. Yeah, B+ for Spirit of the Hunt. Splendid Reclamation is next. 3 and a green for a sorcery at rare. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Not a big fan of this one myself.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I mean, I get the dream. I get it that you want to mill yourself and make a bunch of mana and cast something huge, but it's just way too many things happening to make this card really good.
Yeah, you have to have self-mill.
You have to have self-mill, and significant number of it. The other problem is that, like, I don't know what the average case scenario is, but let's just say that you go turn 1 Vessel of Nascency, you crack it, and then, a few turns later you play a Splendid Reclamation and get like 2 lands out of it.
You're going to get less than 2 lands on average.
On average, you're definitely getting less. Let's just say you're running hot and you get 2 lands. I'm still not that excited about Splendid Reclamation. I need things to do with my mana there. We've seen cards like this, like Explosive Vegetation, which are medium, right? These aren't cards that people clamor for in Limited. Yeah,
this card's just bad. I mean, it might as well just be an F.
I think it's an F.
Yeah.
Ulvenwald Observer is next. It's 4 green for a 6/6 Treefolk at rare, and it says, whenever a creature you control with toughness 4 or greater dies, draw a card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, an unlikely ability to come up, but when it does, it's quite good. I mean, if you have a multiple 4 toughness creatures, you play this, you start getting in combat, it's like, okay, now you have to take it or chump block or trade, and I get to draw a card, and I'm fine with you taking it and chump blocking. So, good card.
What do you think about a 6/6 for 6?
Nothing special.
Right. It's like fine, right? It's
I've got this guy
below
at like
market rate.
C+.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. The ability doesn't seem like it would come up, and it's not like a super bargain. I could see playing it. It's not that it's unplayable, especially with a little bit of mana ramp. But, one thing that I noticed at the pre-release was that if you're playing green and you've got any of the new werewolves, you have places to put your mana, and you don't necessarily need, clunky cards like Ulvenwald Observer. I like C+ on it as well.
Having mana sinks does make expensive cards worse.
For sure. Especially when they're just not that impactful like that one. Yeah. All right, let's move on to white, where we've got, let's just start off with a nice one. Bruna the Fading Light is our first rare for white. It's 5 white for a 5/7 legendary creature, Angel Horror, and it's a rare. When you cast Bruna the Fading Light, you may return target angel or human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and she's got flying and vigilance, and she melds with Gisela the Broken Blade, which we'll talk about that meld thing in a minute, though to say it's far-fetched is an understatement. So what do you think about 7 mana, 5/7 flying vigilance that gets back a human or angel from your graveyard to the battlefield?
I want to put this at a B+, but I know deep down it's probably just an A-. I mean, this is definitely a rare that is a good card that you're almost always going to play. 7 mana is a bit pricey, and the ability to return a creature is conditional. Mm-hmm. You need to have a human. I don't even know how many angels there are, but there's not many, I'm sure.
No, there's the one that taps down everything, and then I think the rest are rare.
Yeah, so you pretty much need a human, and you need to have a human have died in combat, but there's probably enough. If you can consistently be returning a human, this is an A-, and if you throw this in a black-white deck with like 2 other humans, it's going to be like a stone even B. So I think it's a good card, but you need to work a little bit for it.
I have it at A- as well. Bruna, to me, meets the threshold that I have for what I need out of my 7 mana creature. Mm-hmm. She's 5/7 with flying, so she blocks everything, basically. Oh, yeah. And she's got vigilance, so you can start taking huge chunks of your opponent's life total. In the scenario where you're at parity, she completely changes that. And then on top of it, for the times when you do get a creature back, that is a stabilizing play. A 5/7 flyer and any other creature just makes it very difficult for your opponent to kill you the next turn if they couldn't have killed you the turn prior.
Yeah, so I like it, actually.
Yeah, so, when we talk about how to grade cards, we use the quadrant theory where we put them in the different stages of the game. And, the most important one for that is when you're behind. It's the cards that the thing that you put the special golden star is when a card that can take you from being behind to evening you up or even putting you ahead. And I think Bruna meets that requirement. And yes, she charges you for it. 7 mana is legit. And you're going to lose games with Bruna the Fading Light in your hand that if it was 5 mana spell of any variety, you may have been able to hang in there and win. But I do think that Bruna, if you're going to, play a longer game, is powerful enough to get me up into that A range. So yeah, I'm going to go, it's either an A or an A-. I'm going to go A- just because I'm not sure exactly how often you get to actually get a creature back.
Yeah, I like it.
Collective Effort. We've got an Escalate card here in white. It's 1 white for a sorcery, and the Escalate cost is to tap an untapped creatures you control. It's kind of weird. So choose one or more. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. Destroy target enchantment. And this is a big one. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls.
I have this card at directly proportional to the power level of the first ability. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater.
Okay.
Because if your opponent had no creatures in their deck with power 4 or greater, this card would kind of suck. It would be 3 mana to give all your creatures +1/+1, like a one-time only Glorious Anthem. Because part of the reason that Glorious Anthem is really good and limited is because when you trade off, the game goes on. You make positive trades, and then the creatures you draw later in the game have the bonus. But this is only going to affect the creatures that you've already put into play.
Okay, and good point.
So yep. I think that when you get to kill a creature and pump all your guys, it's really good.
Game.
And if you only pump your guys, it's not very good. But when you meet all those requirements, and it has the upside of killing enchantments, which is not totally irrelevant. So I have this card at a B+, but it's mostly for the first ability.
I like B+ on Collective Effort as well. I think the card's really strong.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it's destroy target creature with power 4 or greater first.
You want to put a counter on there, guys, and kill it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want the option.
Nice.
I want the option. Nice. Deploy the Gatewatch is next. Did you see what Reed wrote about this?
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
It was pretty good. 4 white for a sorcery at Mythic. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put up to 2 Planeswalker cards from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. We don't need to waste much time on Deploy the Gatewatch. You're just not There's just no scenario realistically where you're ever running this, so it's just an F.
Yeah.
If I had one Planeswalker in my deck, I still wouldn't run Deploy the Gatewatch. If I had two, I guess I would. But
if I had one Planeswalker, no matter how good, even like a Sorin Grim Nemesis, I think putting this card in your deck is a massive error.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. So F on Deploy the Gatewatch. What is next? Gisela the Broken Blade. So here's the other half of the combo we talked about a minute ago. She's very strong. 2 white for a 4/3 flying, first strike, lifelink. She's a legendary creature, Angel Horror as well.
That's it?
That's it. There is more with the whole thing, and I'll cover that very briefly just because the truth is that, yes, it's very powerful, but getting a Mythic Rare and a Rare Angel that are both first pickable is just going to be nearly impossible. Then you have to get both of them on the battlefield, which is tricky business as well. If you do, you're going to win the game, but you're going to win the game anyway. So the point here is let's just focus on Giselle the Broken Blade, not as a meld card, but instead as a 4/3 for 4 mana that has flying, first strike, and lifelink. What a bomb.
Yeah, I really want to say A+. Maybe I should just only say A, but this card is so far above the curve. If this card costed 6 mana, it would still be playable. If it cost 5 mana, it would still be an A. But at 4 mana, it's like cheap. The lifelink is huge, so you're going to win almost every race. It has flying. Yeah, this card is just great.
Yeah, I think it's a rock solid A. They gave us a little bit of a break by giving her 3 toughness, so she dies to a few more removal spells. The black enchantment, also the red uncommon. So there's a few spells that kill Gisela. Not that that's a knock against the card, you still play it and all that, but at least they gave us a shot, right? Like if when she had,
when you play this card and they don't kill it, you almost always win.
Yes.
Like,
go ahead.
No, it's just like that combination of abilities is. Sometimes they'll throw trample on a creature that doesn't get blocked very often. It's kind of whatever, but none of the abilities on this card are whatever.
No, exactly. You'll see that sometimes where there's kind of throwaway abilities and that aren't matter as much, but this is not one of them. Also, going back to what I said, put this on quadrant theory. When you're behind, you play Giselle the Broken Blade, and they just cannot attack you. Like, even biggish creatures can't attack you, and you're gaining life, killing their creatures at the same time, and it can stabilize a board. And if you're at parity, this thing is an absolute house because it just starts flying over, and it cannot really enter combat with many of the flyers in the set and have the other flyers survive at 4 power with first strike. So yeah, I think Giselle the Broken Blade is just like a rock solid A.
Yep.
I will mention that, again, if you do live the dream, and Godspeed to you, of getting Bruna and Gisela on the battlefield at the same time, you can actually, I should mention when this actually happens, shouldn't I? It is at the beginning of the end step, I believe, but let me double check. At the beginning of your end step, if you both own and control Gisela and Bruna, you exile them and meld them, and then they come back, and they are Brizella, Voice of Nightmares, which is a 9/10 legendary Eldrazi angel with flying, first strike, vigilance, and lifelink, and your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's just going to happen so infrequently and limited. But if you do, congratulations. Send me a picture on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see here. Providence is next. This is a super weird card. It's 5 white for a sorcery at Rare. It says, you may reveal this card from your opening hand. If you do, at the beginning of your first upkeep, your life total becomes 26. Now, that's weird, but then also it's just a 7 mana sorcery that says your life total becomes 26. So, as a matter of course, on limited resources, we hate cards that just only gain you life. Right?
As you should,
right? But there is an interesting discussion that happens when people say, all right, well, where's the limit? Right? Because if you handed me a card that said white sorcery, you gain 100 life, I would play that card, right? There is a limit to where the number of life, goes. And usually, they cap out at 5 or 7 or something like that. And that still ends up not being enough. But Providence is weird. If you have it in your opener, you gain 6 life off the top, and then you could take quite a bit of damage on your march up to 7 mana, and then just gain all of it back and get back up to 26. My gut instinct on Providence is that it's garbage, right? I just want to avoid it. It's unplayable, and I don't like it. Is there any argument against that?
No. When this card is in your opening hand, I'm not even willing to acknowledge that it's a bonus of the card. Because I wouldn't trade having a 6-card hand for starting at 26 life. That's a bad deal.
It's a totally bad deal.
You have a card in your hand that doesn't do anything. Like, I'm not going to start at 6 cards for 6 life. It's just that this line of text is deceiving me by acting like it's a bonus when it's not a bonus.
Okay,
you know what I don't understand about this card?
What's that?
The second ability says your life total becomes 27. Oh, it's a sorcery. I see. Okay, that makes sense. Never mind.
Okay.
Yeah. But, this card's really bad.
Yeah, it's just bad, right? I wanted to like it because I want to find the exception to the rule, but I don't think we've done it here. So I'd give Providence an F. I'm not planning on playing it.
Yeah, this card is just horrible. I'm in for an F too.
Sanctifier of Souls is 3 and a white for a 2/3 human cleric at rare. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And you can pay 2 and a white, exile a creature card from your graveyard, and get a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying.
Yeah, this card is great.
Okay, so how does it play out? Because, we see a 4-mana 2/3, and we're immediately like, ugh. That's not what we want. But it gets temporarily bigger whenever another creature enters the battlefield. So that's when you cast a creature in it and it resolves, or if you use its ability. Is this just like really good in the late game when you've got like 2 or 3 creatures in your graveyard and you just start turning them into spirits? Is this a turn 4 play that ends up being really good? How does it actually play out?
Yeah. If I'm a white deck, I'm always going to play this card, but it's definitely going to perform a bit better in an aggressive deck because you're much more likely to play creatures in the early game that just trade off, like Devilthorn Foxes or whatever. When they don't trade off, you're going to deal a bunch of damage. But if they trade off, you're going to get a bonus out of this card. And if I just play this on turn 4, it says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, it gets +1. So if I just play a 5-drop, I've got a 3/4 attacking creature. That's really unlikely to be beaten in combat at that stage in the game. So it's like play it turn 4, next turn attack for 3. Next turn you can just attack and then either make a token or play a cheaper creature and threaten to make a token. Now it's got a 4-power creature. So it's a good attacking creature, good late game mana sink. Yeah, just a great card.
Yeah, the card just seems solid to me. Yeah. I'm not super impressed with the stats, and even if it is getting +3/+3, but it can also do it multiple times. If you play 2 creatures, it's going to get +2/+2 until end of turn. And the fact that it makes spirits and not just like human soldiers or whatever is a big deal. I value those 1/1 spirit tokens very highly. I mean, those are approaching a card worth of value. They're somewhere in the half to 3/4 of a card worth, a value for a 1/1 flyer. And that's, you activate this thing twice and you're really getting ahead. I think Sanctifier Souls is pretty solid. I'm not in love with it. I would give it a B-. I'm not like super high on it, but I think it's good.
Yeah, I'm in the B+ range. I like this card a lot.
All right. Selfless Spirit is 1 and a white for a spirit cleric. It's a 2/1 with flying. It's rare. And you can sacrifice it to give creatures you control indestructible until end of turn.
Wow. Yeah, this is very good.
That's super good.
It's definitely not a bomb, but it's just incredibly efficient.
Yeah. I like Selfless Spirit at like a B. Like a 2/1 flyer for 2 is already good, and then you can save something bigger from a removal spell, depending on what the removal spell is. Of course, it's good against sweepers, but we don't really see many of those, including cards like, Descent Upon the Sinful or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, 2/1 flying for 2, almost always going to make your deck. And the ability is not negligible. That's a real ability. It means that you get to play the game in a way where you're not afraid of what happens in combat. Like, you can make blocks that are good for you that you wouldn't normally make if you were afraid of a combat trick or if you were afraid of. And once you get a better creature in play, it's kind of like the honor guards where if your opponent has a removal, they basically just have to kill this. So it makes the creatures that you play later in the game better, and it's a great on your curve, hard to block. Just super efficient, powerful card. I like it at B too, because you can't get too out of hand. It's just 2-drop.
It's just a 2-drop, but yeah, just all upside for Selfless Spirit. So we give it a B. Sigarda's Aid is next. It is white for an enchantment. It's rare. It says you may cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash. Okay. Whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control.
Yeah, I hate this card.
This card sucks.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, Sigarda's Aid just doesn't give you enough. The auras and equipment having flash just isn't enough of a tangible upside to be worth a card. And getting a free equip on an equipment can be impressive. I've seen that type of thing be impressive, but the problem is that neither of these abilities, and even when they're combined, is not enough to be worth a magic card. A card that's in your deck, a card that's in your hand. You know, in many ways, you've mulliganed if you have a Sigarda's Aid in your hand. It doesn't affect the board in any meaningful way. It's a way to potentially get ahead on mana or get a little tricky with an aura and equipment. Neither of those is worth it. I'd give Sigarda's Aid an F. I don't plan on playing it at any point.
Yeah, to people who would want to put this card in your deck, how many auras and equipments do you think you're even going to get on average?
Yeah.
Even if you run good and get like lots of auras and equipments, it's like you really just want to have creatures for those and not this thing.
Plus, even if you had a deck that had a lot of auras and equipment, that's often a bad deck.
Oh yeah,
because you need creatures. Like, yeah, no, and you make your opponent's removal spells so much better. Yeah, I'm just out on Sigarda's Aid. Thalia, Heretic Cathar is 2 and a white for a 3/2 legendary creature, human soldier. She's got first strike. And you mentioned this earlier. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Well, there's a lot to like here, right? The non-basic lands thing is going to come up infrequently in Limited, but creatures entering the battlefield tapped can be a pretty big game changer. And the fact that you're getting a 3/2 first strike for 3 mana on Thalia already is good. So I'm a big fan. I just think this card is just pure upside.
Yeah, this card is really good. A 3/2 first strike for 3 would be like a B on its own. Mm-hmm. And historically, they've printed creatures that say your opponent's creatures come into play tapped. And those cards have almost always been high picks and very valuable cards. Like, they'd made like white 2 for a 2/3. Your opponent's creatures come into play tapped. Like, that card was very good.
Yeah.
And they've made other cards like it that were very good. And this one is on a body of a creature that you would want at that rate anyway. So you're just getting that ability for free. Yeah, Thalia, I want to say it's an A-. It's probably about that.
Okay. Yeah, A- B+ for me. I think that card's great. Thalia's Lancers, speaking of Thalia, 3 white for a 4/4 human knight, also with first strike. This is a rare. When Thalia's Lancers enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a legendary card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Obviously conveniently able to search up Thalia, but any legend you can get with it, and you're getting it on a body that's pretty reasonable. A 4/4 first strike for 5 mana is going to do pretty well in combat, and if it has any chance to get you the card out of it, then it's just excellent.
Yeah, I think that if you had no legends in your deck, this would be a C+, and if you have even one legend, it's like an A.
Yeah,
just because
I agree.
It's super efficient creature, and it's better than just drawing a card because it draws you a spell at a point in the game when spells are really valuable when you have 5 lands, it just draws you a spell that's almost always the best spell in your deck.
Yeah, because it's a legendary creature.
So like it's a whole new form of being resilient to removal. It's like you play it and then they kill it. Usually that's card parity, but not when the card you get is the card that you want your opponent wants to kill anyways. Mm-hmm. So it's like you play this and then they can't kill it because you got a legend out of your deck.
I like it. Yeah, I agree. I do think that it's worth it giving it kind of a dual rating here because there is such a gap. I think I like both of your ratings perfect. I think C+ for a 4/4 first strike for 5 mana is about right. And then if you have a legendary creature in your deck, it's an A. Like that is just the card that you want. So
at the pre-release, my opponent cast Thalia's Lancers and went and got Thalia.
Oh God, flavor.
That was the game in which I had the Impetuous Devils in my hand. I was not happy.
Did you win?
I think I did win that game, actually.
What? You are crazy.
I mean, I'm sure I just got lucky, drew 2 removal in a row, but
oh my God.
I was really not happy to have that Devils in my hand.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. All right. Spell Queller. We're moving on to our gold cards here. That does it for white. And we've got a few colorless cards. One thing I wasn't sure about, Owen, but I decided just to run them as colorless because they are technically colorless. I wasn't sure where to put the Emerge cards.
Mm-hmm.
My gut is that we're not going to be playing these Emerge cards outside of their color, of their Emerge ability, but you can. So I wasn't really sure. I left them colorless. So anyway. Just of note. So Spell Queller is our first one. It's really impressive card. It's 1 white-blue for a 2/3 flash flying spirit at rare. When it enters the battlefield, exile target spell Yes, we're doing more things off of the stack again, with converted mana cost 4 or less. And when Spell Queller leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner may cast that card without paying its mana cost.
Yeah, this card's very good. I mean, it's clearly a pushed constructed card, but in limited, it's also very strong. Thing is, if it just said 3 mana for a 2/3 flash, that would be very good.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a card I would always play. And when I saw it in a draft, if I was blue or white, it would make me want to take it and go blue-white, because getting a card of that power is pretty huge. And it's worth noting that when you have this card in limited, you shouldn't be terribly afraid of just doing that. Like if your opponent attacks with the 2/2, you could just cast Spell Queller and block it. I don't think that's a bad play. I was totally going to
say that too, yeah.
And you as long as your opponent doesn't have a combat trick that turn, you're going to eliminate the fact that when you counter a spell with it and they kill it, they just get the spell back. You could actually produce card advantage with this card.
Yeah, totally. Look, Spell Queller meets the floor level very highly and has a nice ceiling on it as well. You know, a 2/3 flash flying for 3 mana, we would give that probably a B-.
Yeah.
I guess Spell Queller's a B. Maybe it's a B+. It's somewhere in that range.
Do you want to discount the quality of a card because of the fact that it's gold, so it's hard to put it in your deck? Or do you
for sure. For sure. I mean, what we tend to do is note that this is a gold card, and so that it only really applies to decks that are these two colors. The rating we're giving it, this is assuming that you can cast this card, which, you know, look, it means the card's worse. It just does. It just can't go in as many decks. It's just not as desirable. You know, pack 2, you open this up. If you're just not in these colors, you know, it's going to be tough to take a Spell Queller. But, you know, if you are in white blue in this scenario, then the card's just amazing. So
yeah, I like this card. I'm pretty happy to give it a B or a B+.
Yeah, same. Gisa and Geralf, I think is how you say it. I can't ever remember. 2 blue-black for a 4/4 human wizard. Of course, they're legendary. When Gisa and Geralf enter the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. So you mill yourself for a full 4. That's a lot. During each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature card from your graveyard. Yeah,
this card is just awesome. I mean, 4 mana for a 4/4. Mm-hmm. It's a great rate. It looks like it's going to be hard to kill. It's powerful. It's going to make it so it's hard for opponents to attack you on the ground the turn you play it. And there's bonus of milling yourself for in this format, and there's a bonus of just casting zombie cards from your graveyard. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just great.
Yeah, I think this card is really good. I love the fact that it's a 4/4 for 4, because all the other text is nice and gives you this opportunity to have upside of hitting Delirium, casting zombies, getting value. But like, even if none of that happens, you still have a very good 4/4 for 4, especially in blue-black. You just don't normally see beefy stats like that on 4-drops in this particular color pair. So I like Gisa and Geralf a lot. I think it's a B+. You know, this isn't the type of card that reaches A range for me, but it's really good.
Yeah, if it was just a 3/2 for 4 with all the same abilities, it would be still very good. Mm-hmm. But given that it's a 4/4, which means like even if you don't mill the right cards or have any zombies in your deck, you still always play it, and it's high quality cards. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable giving it a B+.
Bloodhull Priest is next. This is a 2 black-red for a 4/4 vampire cleric. Whenever Bloodhull Priest enters the battlefield or attacks, if you have no cards in hand, Bloodhull Priest deals 2 damage to target creature or player. And the priest also has madness of 1 black-red. There's a lot to like here, too.
Yeah, this card is just amazing.
I mean, getting Hellbent is difficult in limited. You don't have quite as much control over it in many scenarios. So again, we're leaning on here, though, a 4/4 for 4 mana, which is already good. It's got madness for 1 black-red. If you madness this thing out, it's just a 4/4 on turn 3. That is bigger than anything that your opponent's going to cast for at least 1 turn, sometimes 2. And then if you do have one of those decks that can kind of empty out their hand, you know, we've seen this ability, do 2 damage to a creature or player when it attacks, or if you're Hellbent when you cast it, enters the battlefield, is big time. That one werewolf we both loved, I got to play with that thing. It was absurd. I loved it. And I think Bloodhull Priest, you know, gives you that ability to say, okay, well, I'm going to actually just craft a scenario where I empty my hand and start getting extra value out of it. But again, much like Gisa and Geralf, I'm leaning on the fact that it's a 4/4 for 4, and I'm going to give it also a B+.
Yeah, this is also way better than Gisendralf in the pre-constructed Madness Vampire deck, because if you go turn 2 Olivia's Dragoons, turn 3 you could just play this as a 4/4 flash, and I don't even think that it would be that bad of a play to just in that moment discard your whole hand and just go like, okay, this is going to come into play and deal 2, and then I'm going to untap and I can attack for 6 and deal 2 more, which means you're disallowed from putting 2 toughness creatures into play for the rest of the game, and you're going to die pretty quick because just attacking and dealing 2 as a 4/4 on turn 4, it's like that's just huge. The game's over in like a turn or two.
You attack 3 turns and the game's over for sure.
It's a high risk play, and I probably would avoid doing it. But if you did it, you'd still have like a much higher than 50% chance of winning the game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Bloodhall Priest is a house.
Yeah.
Grim Flayer is next. It's black-green for a 2/2 human warrior at Mythic Rare. It's got trample, so the old 2/2 trample here. Whenever Grim Flayer deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest back on top in any order. Kind of a weird ability. You're not actually getting cards in your hand. You're usually just milling yourself for 3, but if there's something you really want to draw, you can put it on top. It's also got Delirium. It gets +2/+2 as long as you've got Delirium.
It's fueling Delirium and improving the quality of your draw step. So that's a pretty strong ability once you get to trigger it.
Yes, which is the tricky part.
Yeah, you really got to be triggering it without the Grimflayer dying.
Yes.
That's the big thing. It's not like the ability is not nearly as good if the Grimflayer dies to get it. So
right. Yeah,
you've got to work with a little bit of, like, if you're green-black, it's a high pick and a really strong card, but you obviously can't splash it. It's a little less powerful. I was going to say it's a little less powerful to top deck at late game, but you're probably going to have Delirium, so 4/4 trample, that's good.
Yeah, God, it feels like if you go turn 2 Grimflayer and then you get to attack with it and mill yourself just the once, you're probably pretty close to Delirium at that point. And then I'm in love with Grimflayer because it's going to be a 4/4 before long, and it's going to be really strong. But like you said, you don't want to splash a card like Grimflayer because getting it down early is so important, and you just can't rely on that if you're splashing. And if you draw this in the later part of the game, if you don't have Delirium, it's mediocre, and if you do, it's pretty good. I mean, a 4/4 trample is still, a real card even going into the later part of the game.
Oh yeah.
I think I like what you said about it. Look, this is the type of card that in a green-black deck is going to be a high pick and a card that you're always going to play. I'm not over the moon about this card. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think it's strong, and given the right situation, it can take over a game, and what's not to love there?
Yeah, I've got it about a B.
I think it's a
B,
maybe. Yeah, maybe a B-. It's fine. Ulrich of the Crawlin' Horde. This guy's, he likes to pick fights. He's 3 red-green for a 4/4 human werewolf. And whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms into Ulrich of the Crawlin' Horde, so that means transform back into the front side from the other side, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. And I can tell you, Owen, I had this card in my pre-release deck, and +4/+4 is a hell of a lot.
Yeah, you think?
That is a very large number that enabled
huge.
Massive attacks that I, of course, didn't have before casting Ulrich. And, the card is really good. Now, it also has a werewolf ability. We kind of got used to the new werewolf ability where you're just paying mana to transform them, but that's not the case. Ulrich's old school. At the beginning of each upkeep, if nobody casts a spell that turn, then you get to transform, just like the old werewolves. He becomes Ulrich Uncontested Alpha, legendary werewolf as well. And he's a 6/6, and when he transforms into Ulrich, he fights a non-werewolf creature you don't control.
Yeah, this card just looks outrageous to me.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, like
it's
all
funny.
The abilities are great, and if your opponent the thing is, if your opponent can't play a spell, it's probably because they don't have removal, and when they can't play a spell, it transforms into just chomp.
Yeah. Humph one of their creatures, attack for 6 maybe. Yeah, it's funny. I love cards. Like, I've really come around, as I started to get more into Magic and evaluating cards and understanding it, I immediately kind of skipped into that mode where, like, the finer details really kind of, I was enthralled with those. And, like, I realized quickly that kind of big, dumb green creatures maybe weren't as good as I thought they were, when I first started playing. And I felt really smart for knowing that. But I got to tell you, I have relearned the lesson that sometimes big stats matter. That is just like, it's huge. This thing, you know, it +4/+4 is absolutely massive. This thing's a 6/6 if it gets to transform. And the really cool part is that you have a lot of control over that. You can just be like, yeah, you're tapped out, go. And this thing's flipping over and killing a creature. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a massive creature that doesn't suffer from any of the problems that putting big creatures in your deck suffer from, because it's affordable, it's flexible, it's going to generate value when you cast it and when it flips, and it's not even inconceivable that this card could transform back and forth multiple times in a game.
Totally.
And it probably will in the games when it transforms once. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of it. That said, I have it between B+ and A-. It does affect the board in a meaningful enough way that I could see it getting an A-. But you know, when you're behind, right, the +4/+4 ability kind of disappears, and you're getting a 4/4 for 5, which is medium. When you do get to transform it, then you're kind of back in the ball game because it's going to kill something. So I don't know. I don't really know where it fits on that scale. I'm going to say A- just because after having played with it, I was impressed by it enough that when I was attacking, it was so good that when I'm behind, I'm still settling for, you know, a reasonable card here. It's not like it's dead when you're behind.
Yeah, I would have put it at an A, but it's possible that it's an A-.
Yeah. Heron's Grace Champion is 2 green-white for a 3/3 human knight. It's got flash and lifelink. And when it enters the battlefield, other humans you control get +1/+2 and gain lifelink until end of turn. Woof.
Yeah, I like this card for all the same reasons that I said I liked the Spirit of the Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an efficient creature with flash, and it can pump your other creatures. It's a little bit worse because it costs more, and you get a little bit more out of it with the lifelink. But in general, it's going to be a worse card, but play out very similarly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only giving other humans you control the +1/+1 on lifelink, so keep that in mind. It's not your whole team. But man, I could see this card really doing some work. It's a little weird, like you're going to want to do it while you're attacking sometimes, which is kind of a weird time to play a creature, but yeah, you're going to do it. I think Heron's Grace Champion is excellent. I think that, you know, green-white, of course, are the human colors. You're just sort of naturally going to end up with a lot of humans in those colors anyway. And I think it's probably like a B or a B+.
Yeah, I had it about there.
Tamiyo Field Researcher is next. And this is, of course, another Planeswalker. So Tamiyo costs 1 green, white, blue. So we're talking about splashing here almost under any circumstance. Is she worth it? Well, she comes down with 4 loyalty. Her +1 ability is choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, you draw a card. Of note, you can target your creatures or their creatures or some combination. -2, tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. That's pretty insane. Tap down 2 creatures and just keep them on ice for a full turn cycle.
Very good, yeah.
And then her ultimate is -7, draw 3 cards, then you get an emblem with you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana costs. Which is also kind of insane, though.
Some, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you could probably put together a win by using the +1 and the -2 before that point. But Tamiyo seems very powerful to me. Being able to lock down their 2 biggest threats to give you some time to sort of build out a board or just kill your opponent seems really good. The +1 ability strong. If you're ahead, you're going to just, you know, put the game away in sort of an unreal fashion as you have a Planeswalker and are drawing extra cards while dealing damage. If you're behind, you can still target their 2 creatures, block, maybe get some trades, draw some extra cards, etc. And then the -2 ability, you can do it back to back if you need to and just sort of use it as a massive tempo play. There's a lot to like about Tamiyo here.
Yeah, I like Tamiyo, but I will say it looks like it's at its best when you're the aggressive player. And that's how you get the most out of the +1. And using the -2 is either like pressing your advantage or staying alive, and it's kind of a poor use of a card to stay alive.
Right.
I like the +1, but it means you need to be aggressive. It's hard to cast a 3-color spell when you're being aggressive, but if you can make it work, it's really high power. I would lean towards saying like a B+.
I think so too. The fact that she's so difficult to cast is really a tough one.
Yeah, it's the biggest knock against it.
Yeah, for sure. B+ for Tamiyo seems fine though.
Yeah.
All right. We've got a few colorless cards. I'm skipping through because some of these are the transformed cards. But all right, here's one. Decimator of the Provinces. So this one is 10 mana for a 7/7 Eldrazi Boar. It's a mythic rare, but it does have an emerge cost. And again, I decided to break these off because I was true to the actual mana cost. But the truth is, you're much, much more likely to play this in a green deck, as its emerge cost is 6 green, green, green. Pretty steep. But when you cast it, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. And on top of all of that, the Decimator itself has trample and haste on its 7/7 body.
Yeah, this is the throwback to Craterhoof Behemoth.
Indeed.
And yeah, this card is very, very good.
Wow.
I think in a green creature-based deck, it's probably just an A. And
Agreed.
I wouldn't play it in a deck that wasn't green. Just 10 mana for that ability is just, it's a bit too steep for me.
I just don't think you're ever playing it. Yeah, 10 mana is just too much.
You could concoct a scenario where you could play it, but it's pretty rare. So.
It's pretty rare. But the emerge cost, I mean, the interesting part about that is that you God, maybe you just do. I was going to say that you're not necessarily incentivized to emerge the Decimator of Provinces at the earliest convenience. But now that I think about it, you probably just are. Even if it's only giving one other creature a pump, you're going to attack for so much damage that the next turn, given that the Decimator has trample and haste, of course, it just means you're probably going to win anyway. So yeah, you'd probably just slam this thing at the earliest turn you possibly can, almost regardless of board state.
Would be really hard for it to be a bad play.
Yeah. Wow, what a great card.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I called the boar from the previous set the big pig, but man, we've got the bigger pig now. This guy's ridiculous. How do we grade it? The emerge cost is still rough. Triple green is no joke.
Yeah, but can the emerge reduce the green?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you have to have GGG mana available. The 6 colorless is all emergible, so that's easy, but I mean, I would assume with a 4 mana creature would probably be what you're likely to sacrifice to it. If that's the case, you're playing GGG2 for this, which is certainly worth the cost. It's just difficult. GGG is tough to come by.
It's a steep color requirement. You probably need 9 or 10 forests in your deck to run this card, but if you pick it early, you're going to be base green and you're going to prioritize creatures. So if you have a good curve in a green deck with this, it's unless your opponent's done something very powerful, you're almost always going to win by casting this card.
I'm going to call it an A.
Yeah, I like it at that.
I think Decimator of Provinces is good enough to get an A.
Yeah.
Distended Mindbender is next. It's 8 mana for a 5/5 Eldrazi insect. Its emerge cost is 5 black. When you cast Distended Mindbender, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card with converted mana cost 3 or less and a card with converted mana cost 4 or greater. That player discards those cards.
Mm-hmm.
Hoof.
Yeah, this card is just amazing.
Wow,
somebody cast it against me at the pre-release. And
did you feel bad?
I lost 2 cards. I was not happy about it.
And they had a 5/5?
Yeah, and it's not even like you exile the cards and get it back when you kill this, or you get a card back like with Thought-Knots here. The cards are just gone.
They're just gone.
And
you could do this on turn 4?
Yeah, it greatly mitigates the risk of emerge too, because it's a lot of time you're like, oh, I don't want them to bounce it or to kill it, but then you just take the 2 best cards out of their hand, and it just doesn't get bounced for kill.
This card's just a joke.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't play it in a deck that wasn't black unless I was really desperate for a playable and I had a lot of mana in my deck.
Yeah,
but when
agreed.
you're black, you're going to play this on turn 4 every time that you can, and it's going to be very hard to beat.
Yeah, of note here as well is that all of these have a cast ability. So like the Decimator of Provinces doesn't get the pump for itself. Also, this one allows you to take away any removal spells that they were going to use on your Distended Mindbender while it's on the stack, and then it resolves, and now they can't be like, well, in response, I'm going to kill your Distended Mindbender. They don't have that option.
Yep. I like this card at an A- only because the power of the discard is relevant to how early you can cast it. If you top deck it late game, it's just a 5/5. I mean, I think when you play it on turn 4, there's a really high correlation with winning the game. But
yeah, for sure.
Not as good of a top deck. So,
wow, Distended Mindbender. I'm just gonna go A. Whatever.
Yeah, totally reasonable.
Elder Deep Fiend is next. This one's blue and colorless. So it's 8 mana for a 5/6 with flash. It's an Eldrazi Octopus. The emerge cost, similar to Distended Mindbender, it's 5 blue. So a lot of the same stuff we said, except for that blue instead of black. When you cast it, tap up to 4 target permanents. And remember, this has flash, so you can do this on your opponent's upkeep or before combat or whatever.
Yeah, a great card. I mean, the most common use for this card is going to be casting it at an end of turn and tapping 4 blockers and hopefully getting through for enough damage to win. And that's going to be more likely to happen when you add 5 power to the board with this card.
Right. That can now attack. Yeah, for sure.
It has other applications, but that's what I'm going to be hoping to do with it. And it does that pretty well.
Yeah, and I think the other one that we mentioned already is turn 4, and again, you can do this on turn 4. You play it on your opponent's upkeep and tap their lands, just take away their turn worth of mana.
If you're ahead on board, you should definitely be trying to do that.
Yeah, and you know what? You are, because you've got a 5/6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this card just seems great. These cards are just busted.
Yeah, they're all really, really pushed.
I just want to give this an A.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think like A- A is.
Yeah, I mean, you can still generate card advantage just by not tapping down an attacker, and after they declare attacks, flash this in and eat it.
And then tapping their land so they can't cast a spell post-combat.
Yes.
Or even just tapping their land so they can't float mana into blockers. You're just like, okay, if you have any trick, you have to cast it now, and then I just won't block.
God, exactly. Wow, that's a really good point.
Yep.
Yeah, this card's super sweet. These are all really great. Again, though, same thing. 8 mana. Unlikely to play that unless I'm in blue.
Yeah, I think this one's more justifiable than the black one because the black one is always costing 8 mana when the discard is a lot less powerful. Yeah. And it doesn't cost 10 like it's more justifiable to play in a deck that's not blue, but it's a much worse card. Like, it's a borderline playable card at 8.
Yeah, but like you said, Elder Deep Fiend can break up a board stall really well.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is Emrakul the Promised, and everybody's seen this one. 13 mana for a 13/13 with flying, trample, and protection from instants. She's, of course, a mythic rare legendary Eldrazi. She costs 1 less to cast for each card type among cards in your graveyard, and when you cast Emrakul, you gain control of target opponent during that player's next turn. After that turn, that player takes an extra turn. I do not know where to come down on Emrakul still. Actually, I got really lucky and opened one up at the pre-release. I did not want to play it. I'm not like, if I was playing at a GP, I would not have had that card in my deck. I decided to put it in my deck for fun because, like, I made a big deal about opening it and I wanted to see what it could do. And it was, a thing that was on camera, so it was for fun and everything. But like, man, I don't know if I want to pay 9 for this.
Yeah, 9 is
it's
a
just
lot.
So much mana. I mean, yes, you do generally win the game when you cast it. I get that, but I don't put 9 drops in my deck very often.
I think at 8, it's like pretty good.
Probably gets there. 7 is a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah.
8 is almost,
it's too hard to get at 7.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm saying, like, if we were to just straight cost it at 7, you would always play this. At 8, it's like, to me, it's like in between. You probably would play it, but once you get to 9,
yeah, 9 and 10 is like, and this is like under optimal conditions. It's like some of the time it's going to cost 11 or it's going to cost 12.
Yeah, that happened to me too. I never actually got to resolve it. The best thing I did was discard it to Cryptbreaker.
That's a good use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would give this card like a D or a D+.
I think so too, man. I'm not that high on it. I mean, look, the ability is insane. The creature itself is completely insane, but God, I'd really need some mana ramp or the ability to really know that I was going to be getting this thing to be 5 cheaper.
Yeah.
Consistently to be happy with it.
Yeah, or just have the ability to make a lot of mana.
Yes, which does happen as well.
Yeah, it can happen, but it's pretty tough.
But I'm giving Emrakul a Promised End a D. Look, this is a classic type of card that people are going to come back at us and say, how could you do that? It's clearly an A. My opponent cast it against me and I lost the game. And this is the perfect card to illustrate the other side of that, right? Which is that you win a lot of games where your opponent's not casting that last card in their hand, and the reason why you won is because they couldn't, and that card's Emrakul, and you never see it.
Yep.
It just sits in their hand, and they go, good game, and they shuffle up their deck, and you're just like, well, I guess I won, but you never get to see that downside. You only get to see when they're like, land, Emrakul, kill all your creatures with your own stuff and all this, whatever. And then
does
you're
seem
like
a just great sideboard card if both people have slow decks.
Totally. I like the card a lot, too. Let's move on to Eternal Scourge, which is 3 mana for an Eldrazi Horror. It's a 3/3 at Rare. We got a 3/3 for 3. You can cast it from exile, which is a weird sentence until you realize when Eternal Scourge becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, exile it.
Ooh, I wasn't even aware that I had that second ability.
Yeah.
That greatly reduces the power of the card.
Yes.
Because if they just have like a tapper, it's like you're spending mana on it, it just dies. Sure, you can cast it, but it's just going to die again.
Yes.
So
if they have repeatable ability to target it, then the card looks pretty mediocre. I mean, it is still just 3 to keep casting it, but it's a liability at that point.
Yeah. 3 mana for 3/3 is very good.
Yeah. I actually think the card's fine. I would play it.
I would play it too.
Yeah, like if they use a real removal spell on it, you can just cast it.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Because it just keeps coming back. So.
Right. So they're just going to avoid it. And I tell you what, a 3/3 for 3, like on turn 3 is good. Also, you can target it yourself. It's only your opponent's abilities abilities and spells. So you can still pump spell it or whatever.
I kind of like it at about a C+, but you just need to be aware that you should sideboard it out liberally.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a B-. I'm going to go a little higher on it because I just can imagine a scenario where they play it on turn 3 and you look down and you're like, well, crap.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep hitting me. I can throw a removal spell at it to slow it down a little bit.
Their best chance is just kill it in combat.
Then it just dies?
I think so.
Does it just die as normal?
Yeah. It says whenever it becomes a target of a spell, yeah. So if I just blocked it with a 3/3, they would just go to the graveyard.
And then that's not a bad scenario for me either. I'm back with you, C+.
Yeah.
All right. We've already done that one. Gyre Reach Sanitarium is interesting. It's a legendary land. It's rare. It taps for colorless mana, and you can pay 2 mana and tap it to have each player draw a card, then discard a card.
It gets very good if you have Madness cards. It gets okay if you're very interested in Delirium. And I think in general, I would hope to play this. Like if I was just black-green, I would just 17 land, 2-color, middle-of-the-road deck, just go 8/8 and play this card and think it's fine. Just because if you get to a point where your opponent has no cards in hand, there's no downside. It's just a land that's letting you loot, which is very strong. And in some games, like if your opponent just has a better deck than you, better draw, as long as you're not getting beat down and you can afford to pay 3 mana to be doing this, it's going to increase variance in the game, which you want to do if you're losing.
Yeah.
So some of the time, yeah, it is fine. It's nothing special, but it's a card that I would lean towards wanting to play.
I think so too, but it's like a C- or something, right? I mean, this is not the kind of card you're going to go out of your way to get.
Yeah, it's like a D+, because if you ever have double colored costs in both your colors, then you don't want it. Yeah. And a lot of the times you put it in your deck, it just never gets activated because either you're ahead or you don't have time. And there's a very select few number of games where you activate it, but the cost is low because it's a land, and the upside could potentially be pretty high.
Yeah, agreed. Well assessed. Handwear Battlements, we mentioned this one earlier. This is a land that goes with the Handwear Garrison. So it taps to add colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can pay red and tap it to have a creature gain haste until end of turn, which is, that's a real upside. And then you can pay 3 red and tap it, and then if you both own and control the rare Handwear Battlements and the rare Handwear Garrison, it becomes the Writhing Township that we talked about earlier, which is definitely a significant upside. Again, the scenario where that actually comes up is when you first pick Handwear Garrison and a Handwear Battlements gets opened at your table, because I don't think anybody else is taking it very highly at all. So if there is one at the table, you will probably get it and then go for it. I would take it in that scenario pretty highly and just try to make that happen, just because like the opportunity cost isn't too low, but the upside's pretty high.
Yep.
But even then, man, I don't. Let's say you open up a Handward Garrison, and then in the next pack you open a Handward Battlements and a good red removal spell. Like, I think I would still just take the removal spell.
Yeah, I would just take the removal.
Just try to wheel the battlements, and if I don't, I just
so
shrug.
few people are going to take it that you're fine.
Card's not great.
I would rate the Handward Battlements almost identically as I would with the Gyre Reach Sanitarium.
Okay.
The cost of putting a colorless land in your deck is not that bad, and the ability, although unlikely to come up, when it does come up, is like pretty strong. Just getting haste on like a 3/3 is like your land just dealt 3 damage. Like, all right, I'm not too good for that.
Yeah, for very low downside. It's not the kind of card that changes everything, but when it happens, you're like, hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, low cost. I wouldn't prioritize it during a draft, but if I'm red and I don't have double color cost in both my colors, I'm going to play it.
Right. All right, I think we've got 3 colorless cards to cover, and then that'll be it for the Rare and Mythic Rare review here. The first one is Lupine Prototype. It's 2 mana for an artifact creature Wolf Construct. It's 5/5. 2 mana 5/5 we've got.
I'm
here.
in, A.
Yeah, A+. Next card. The prototype can't attack or block unless a player has no cards in hand.
Yeah, at first I didn't realize that this card couldn't block. I was like, oh, well, this is great. It's just a 2 mana 5/5 wall, and then if I get no cards, I get to start beating down.
Uh-huh.
But given that it can't do that, it's much worse.
I mean, it basically says this card does literally nothing until somebody gets hellbent.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is it costs 2, so the investment cost is pretty low. It's kind of like a little bit like a Dirkwood Baloth, like it's got suspend. And then once
that's interesting.
Once you meet the requirement, it kind of has haste because you just get to attack right away. So
that's a really interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you have like a good mana curve and you're like a creature-based beatdown deck, the cost is not that big of losing a card early but getting a pretty powerful card late. But you need to just not have any cards in your deck that cost 8 or 7 mana, and maybe only play 1 or 0 6 mana cards. And you need to not have that many combat tricks that get stuck in your hand. I mean, you're gonna have to work for it, but when it works, this is a pretty good card. I would say D+, but it's a build around.
I think D+ as well, but I like it on build around. You really need to make sure you don't have any like super reactive spells sitting in your hand.
It has some pretty significant upside, but you got to work.
I really like your comparison, though, to the Dirkwood Baloth. That's really interesting, because that is not how I viewed this at first, but now that you say that, I think, well, I can make that work.
Yeah.
Not something I really want, but I can make it work. Soul Separator is next. This is a high marks on flavor. Playability-wise, not so much. It's 3 mana for an artifact, and it's a rare. So here's the deal. You pay 5 mana, tap it, and sacrifice the Soul Separator, and you exile a creature card from your graveyard. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that card, except for it's a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types, and it has flying. You also put a black zombie creature token onto the battlefield with power equal to that card's power and toughness equal to that card's toughness.
Yeah.
So this is like a Ben Stark card. It's all flavor. But it's certainly not worth it to actually play, right? I mean, 8 mana combined, and you can only do it once, and you need to have a card in your graveyard to make it work?
Does it have to be your graveyard or any graveyard?
Oh, sorry. Your graveyard, yeah.
I was thinking that this was like only a little bit worse than Rise from the Grave because it costs 3 to play it, but you also get a 1/1, which is like, But given that you can only target your own graveyard, it's like pretty noticeably worse. This card is not unplayable, but it is very bad. It's inefficient and somewhat unreliable. But if you were desperate for a playable, I don't think putting this in your deck is really that bad.
Okay.
Because it can closely mimic Rise from the Grave. Whatever. Turn 3, if you didn't have a different play, the cost is not that big. You play this. Then later in the game, you activate it. You can, at instant speed, you can be putting something out there. You get a big zombie creature, and you get a 1/1 with the abilities of the card, so you can trade off the bigger part, keep the, there's some stuff you can do with it.
It's probably better, right? Like if Rise from the Grave had this where it split the card into 2, the soul and the body, so to speak, that would probably just be better, right?
Yeah. This card is playable, but highly inefficient, and I would avoid it.
As it sits, I think it's much, much worse than Rise from the Grave, just because of the total mana and the fact that it's not their creatures. Yeah, I think it's a D-. Like, again, I think you're right. If it slipped into your deck, you wouldn't cry about it, but at the same time, you should really avoid if you can.
There's going to be games where you're losing and you draw it, and you're like, wow, what am I doing?
What am I doing with my life? All right, I think we just have one more card. It's Stitcher's Graft. It's 1 mana for an equipment. The equip cost is 2. Of course, really important thing to look at with all equipment. And the equipped creature gets +3/+3, which is like, wow, there's got to be some downside here. And there is. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. And because like your first thought should be, well, that's fine, I'll just move it over. Whenever Stitcher's Graft becomes unattached from a permanent, sacrifice that permanent. So there goes that plan.
Yeah, you totally get crushed if you put this on a creature and they kill the Stitcher's Graft because it dies and then your creature dies.
Oh, God. Ugh.
So pretty weak against any kind of artifact removal. But again, I think this card is bad, but not too bad that I would never put it in a deck. If it happens to land on a creature with vigilance, it's just all gravy from there.
Good point.
Get to attack every turn. It's going to be good. It's going to be good if you put it on a creature that's meant for blocking. You just because it makes your creature huge. If you're not in a race scenario, it's like if you put this on a token, it's relatively low cost because like if you put it on like a 1/1 insect, that's a creature that's unlikely to have affected the game anyways.
Okay.
And going like attack for 4. Next turn, do nothing. Next turn, attack for 4. It's like your opponent can't let that happen forever.
No, that's a good point.
And the cost is pretty low. I mean, I don't like this card, but it can have its moments.
Okay. Would you give it like in the D range, like a D?
Yeah, like a D plus probably.
So looking for expendable creatures, vigilance is at a premium with it.
Yeah, those are nice.
All right. Yeah, no, that's really good. Those exceptions actually did bring it for me out of F into D range because there are, like you said, it'll have its moments, though it's not a go-to card. It's not a card that you just always want to play in your deck.
No.
All right. That's going to do it for the Rare and Mythic Rare set review. A lot of sweet cards in this set for sure. They went deep on it. There's some cool cards, but there's also just some powerful stuff. I think my favorites were the some of those blue rares and the emerge cards.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the ones I want to open the most. Those emerge cards are insane.
Yeah.
I think they're also going to be the progenitors of a lot of like, I was going to win this game and now I didn't.
I hope I get Eerie's Wrath a lot.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad one either. All right, well that's going to do it for the Rare and Mythic Rare set review here for Eldritch Moon. I want to remind you that Limited Resources is brought to you by channelfireball.com. Please do check them out for videos, articles from some of the best players in the world, all for free, as well as a full selection of singles, including Eldritch Moon, sealed product, and supplies. You can find it all over there at channelfireball.com. Owen, where can people find you? Also, I did want to say thanks again for filling in for Luis for the set reviews. You did a great job, and it was great to have you on.
No, I was happy to do it, and I know that the viewers have accustomed themselves to a certain quality of you and Luis, and I'm glad they could have a little bit higher quality with me coming on.
And if people want to give you feedback about that comment, where can they find you?
I'm pretty active on my Twitter at Owen Turtenwald, and I post articles on channelfireball.com.
All right. Hey, good luck with the PT, man. Now that you've got all this extra information that you wouldn't have had before.
Oh, I have a huge edge on the field now.
You do. My expert insight, you never have had that before, so I expect you to 6-0 the draft with ease.
It'll be fun.
If you want to find us on social media, Owen told you, you can find him at Owen Turtenwald. I am Marshall_LR. You can also email us if you've got something a little longer form, lr@lrcast.com. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. That includes links to the Facebook page, Luis's stream, my stream. You can find the LR YouTube channel, which has a bunch of cool extra content on it that you can subscribe to over there. And whenever a new video comes out, you'll see it. You can find the links for the Patreon that I mentioned earlier there, all of that stuff on lrcast.com. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And next week, Luis is back.